Hello. Hi guys. Good morning to you. Just woke up and today we are going to discuss Dr. Meenakshi Jain's rebuttal of Satish Chandra's NCERT history medieval history textbook, which was reinstated after 6 years of Meenakshi Jain's book being taught in the NCERT syllabus. And I read just the introduction part of it, and it seems that she was quite feisty and fierce in her criticism. I was checking out the introduction to understand what's the tone of her. What tone has she taken in the paper? Is she like Satish Chandra is otherwise a great historian. He has just made these one or two very significant mistakes, etc. Because I wanted to use the word Meenakshi Jain destroys Satish Chandra or debunk, something like rude or harsh. So I had to confirm what's the tone of Dr. Meenakshi Jain. So then I realized that after reading the introduction, the audio now is coming fine, right? Yeah, okay, it's coming fine. So after reading the introduction, I realized that no, she has completely actually destroyed the paper, the book by Dr. Satish Chandra. Although she mentions that it's not a completely exhaustive, fully detailed criticism of the book. It's just a rough review. That's why it's called a random survey. Srihari Balahalli, namaskara. So okay, all the guys coming now. Rohan, hi. And did you guys see that Kasbapet seat lost by BJP after about 20-25 years? And I posted about that, hinting at the fact that that it's hindering Hindu unity because Brahmins of that area refused to vote for the BJP candidate because he was not Brahmin. So two people got pissed off, but I got 27 likes on the post. So but it's the two comments that are bothering me more than the fact that 27 people or 26 people have liked the post. So it's always like that on social media. You were saying that you will read it. No, I was saying I will read it next week, but then I realized that today I was supposed to do history of Indian philosophy, but then I decided not to because my physical copy of that history of Indian philosophy has not arrived yet. It will arrive tomorrow, so I'll do it tomorrow. Arthashastra is getting postponed to next week, Saturday night. So today we will do this. Because the history of Indian philosophy that I'm having to read from the Ministry of Culture website, that website I think has some issue or something that only when I cast that through my Google Meet, only then my entire video, webcam, everything crashes. Both days it happened. I was reading the history of Indian philosophy, so I'm staying away from that website now. I think that website is too heavy or something because it's a very well made website. So, do you guys think that it's okay for Brahmins of Kasbapet in Maharashtra to be pissed off for not having Brahmin candidates, or do you think BJP should be more sympathetic towards modern day Brahmins, a lot of whom don't know anything about Vedas, etc.? Hey Anna, hi Shravya. Okay, now let me go to the paper by Meenakshi Jain ji. Flawed narratives, history in the old NCERT textbooks. Oh, and by the way, this paper has been recommended by the viewer who is commenting here, Nihilist Trader, and it's an absolutely fantastic and powerful paper. As far as I've read the introduction so far, she sat down to write this with a full intent to be absolutely demolishing. There's no niceties in the paper. The only thing she hasn't done is used cuss words. That's the only thing left to do. Rohan is saying, yeah, I've seen those two comments. As long as mindset is not changing, Hindu unity will never happen. Yeah, pretty tough. Although I'm not that bothered after all, because I remember that Abhijit Iyer Mitra was saying, remember that there are always three kinds of right wingers in India. Those who are like the Hindu modernists, so to speak, like Kushal, Mehra, Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Then there's the section who are like, yeah, there's no casteism should not happen, but social change needs to happen now. And then there's the section that actually is kind of probably Hindu fascist right wing in mindset. They believe all Muslims should be killed, and the people who want Brahmin candidates but maybe don't want Muslims to be killed. There are some people in between all that. There are different kinds. Okay, Afin is saying, nope, most didn't go for BJP because of the increase in quotas and a few things RSS are doing. I know this because I have a friend whose family is from there. Okay, yeah, I thought that might be your case as well. It might not be the entire story. I just read that it's the reason is that no Brahmin candidates were fielded, only because I read it in the news sources. They are saying that it's because of that, because BJP has not been pro-Brahmin enough. And there's one guy in my friend list. I think he's a disillusioned BJP voter. Some people say he's a Congress stooge now. So that guy was also saying that it's because of the not fielding Brahmin candidates. So I guess they'll vote for BJP in the Lok Sabha. What's the Indic wing's stance on LGBT and abortion? There's no Indic wing stance uniformly on anything, right? My personal stance is that abortion should be allowed up till the first 1 month, because you can find out. There are many ways to avoid the situation of pregnancy, right? You can not have sex, you can use condoms, you can use eye pills. Then I'm giving you 1 more month to see that, okay, I'm pregnant and let's decide whether to keep this baby or not. 2nd month onwards, I think it should be banned. Okay, we are starting the paper now. You guys keep letting me know that what you guys think of this, because if it is because of that Brahmin candidates were not fielded and that's why they got pissed off, then it's very irritating. And this paper starts with an introduction, and the introduction starts with a quote from Sir Jadunath Sarkar. Okay, and Jadunath Sarkar is like my social media history influencer. He is my he's the endorsement. Okay, if you want me to buy a particular history book, you just have to mention Sir Jadunath Sarkar's name in good light in anywhere in the book. I bought the big Bengali Itihash book just because the foreword was written by Sir Jadunath Sarkar. Oh, in fact, the author says that I am starting this book with the blessings of Acharya Jadunath Sarkar, and this book also starts with Jadunath Sarkar. Srihari Batlahalli, isn't it a little cliche to say Brahmins can't do this when every other community has been doing this till now? No, I'm saying no communities should do this till now. But if a Vaishya is voting for only Vaishya candidates and nobody else when it comes to BJP, then I'll blame that Vaishya also. Rohan is saying Hindutva support LGBTQ but trads don't. Yeah, different people will support different. Okay, so Jadunath Sarkar's quote in Meenakshi Jain's fierce, vicious rebuttal of Satish Chandra's book says, I would not care whether truth is pleasant or unpleasant, and in consonance with or opposed to current views. I would not mind in the least whether truth is or is not a blow to the glory of my country. If necessary, I shall bear in patience the ridicule and slander of friends and society for the sake of preaching truth. But I shall seek truth, understand truth, and accept truth. This should be the firm resolve of a historian. Okay. Lots of comments. Okay, I'll get into the comments later. So now Meenakshi Jain writes, with hindsight, it must be conceded. Wait, the page turned. Different paper reading websites have different interfaces. With hindsight, it must be conceded that the NCERT's decision to discontinue textbooks authored by stalwarts of the Marxist school, this happened when Atal Bihari Vajpayee became the Prime Minister, okay? That's when Meenakshi Jain's book got inserted into the syllabus. So when they decided to discontinue the books by Marxist historiography, Marxist historians, that has triggered a veritable shift in the country's intellectual template. And it was probably apprehending precisely such a fallout that leftist scholars had mounted a campaign of unprecedented ferocity to stall the new textbooks, even going to the extent of having sympathizers file a case in the Supreme Court against NCERT's proposed curriculum revision. So they had filed a court case against BJP's decision to teach Meenakshi Jain's books in the NCERT syllabus. NCERT books are taught in only the CBSE board, right? Strangely, no one bothered to ask why scholars of hitherto unquestionable eminence were so perturbed at being dislodged from schoolrooms when their status, expertise and dominance remained unchallenged at the university level, where they were also more likely to encounter students who could appreciate the finer points of their scholarship. So why were they bothered? Perhaps because these scholars were, above all, purveyors of an ideology. The indoctrination of young minds from a primary age itself was crucial to their agenda. That is why they had in the first instance prepared history primers, which were for decades rammed down the throats of helpless school children. Look at the tone of the paper. The medieval era of Indian history was the special focus of Marxist interest. Yes, always. We have discussed this in our live streams as well. Remember that anytime a leftist brings up something about history, that see this bad thing happened, then biryani came, architecture came, they have no recollection or no knowledge of anything, any of India's past before 1500 AD. Mysteriously. But they know everything about 2000 BC, 1000 BC, 800 AD's Greek history, Roman history, okay? अलेक्जेंडर ने यहाँ गया, अलेक्जेंडर वहाँ पे बाथरूम गया, अलेक्जेंडर ने यहाँ ना, सब कुछ पता है अलेक्जेंडर के बारे में. 1500 AD के पहले इंडिया में क्या हुआ कुछ नहीं पता. The medieval era of Indian history was the special focus of Marxist interest. Their contribution to the study and proper appreciation of this period was not entirely a negative development. क्यों? देखते हैं. To the extent that Marxist methodology lays special stress on the role of material forces in the shaping of history, they were able to make a significant contribution in highlighting the exploitative nature of the state with capital letter, that means the governance, exploitative nature of the state under Sultanate and Mughal rulers, who appropriated the bulk of the agrarian produce, leaving the peasants in abject poverty. So, the fact that the Mughal state, the Mughal government oppressed the class, oppressed the general population, and as a result of which the farmers became poorer and poorer, they use that narrative today to criticize free markets or a little bit capitalism oriented governments like BJP, that okay, see, it's like that always kings have always oppressed farmers in India. So farmers need free electricity, free water, free everything. And also then the economy is such that their produce goes to waste. They get free electricity. They create food that no one needs. And then even then they have to commit suicide. So that's the utopia that leftists have come up with, basing all these on the fact that Mughal governance of farmers was extremely poor. But they fail to criticize Mughals as a whole. They will say that this is the nature of power. Governments ऐसे ही होते हैं. Unless a proletariat guy with an ukulele who sings nice anti-war songs, unless that guy becomes the prime minister, we will always have anti-farmer governments. Okay. Srihari is saying their history starts from medieval history to 1947 and starts again post 2002. Yes, Srihari ji, there was one funny thing in the debate between Harsh Madhusudan and Dr. Shashi Tharoor. So Dr. Shashi Tharoor was saying that remember Indian history didn't start at 2014. So Harsh Madhusudan says, yeah, it also didn't start at 1947. What a lot of people seem to believe. But Marxist methodology in India is not recognized for its emphasis on economic determinism alone. It is associated with an active hostility to India's native civilization and its achievements. This is the problem. This is the specific issue that Meenakshi Jain has brought out in the very first page in the introduction. This is the main problem, okay? Marxists will, when push comes to shove, when you shove a lot of info and facts on them, that this happened, iske bare mein kyun nahi bol rahe ho? Then they will say, no, see, Marxist academics have done such a great job of bringing out the data, the facts, we have discussed this. Then we'll have to counter them saying that this is the end result. The end result is, you seem to believe, or your readers seem to believe, maybe not with your intention, that Hinduism is bad, everything in India was bad. That is the main conclusion we are drawing, right? I have drawn that before reading Sanjeev Sanyal. Sanjeev Sanyal says he himself draws that conclusion. Prakhar Gupta, who hasn't read these books, still draws those conclusions. So what's the coincidence here? How is this happening if you all didn't want to do this? So the Marxist methodology is associated with an active hostility to India's native civilization and its achievements. It is noted for its blatant bias, the Marxist methodology that is noted for its blatant bias towards the Islamic advent that commenced in this period. Non-partisan scholars describe the Islamic thrust into the subcontinent as one of the most prolonged instances of cultural encounter in world history, and accept that, notwithstanding the peaceful entry of Arab traders, a substantial part of Muslim settlement was achieved by conquest. Okay, remember the Arab traders thing. So, since a lot of traders did come from Arabia peacefully and they lived here, but that's not the most number of Muslims who came here, okay? They were a very small fraction of a minority. But a lot of, I think, Congress supporters or on the people on the left are trying to now pass off most Muslims of India as if being the descendants of Arab traders. They are saying that no, invasions were a small thing. Most of them were migrants. You remember Salman Khurshid said this thing while debating Jaisai Deepak in the India Today conclave. He said, okay, whatever you believe, invasions or migrations, whatever happened, as if that's 50-50. 50% Islamic migration, 50% Islamic invasions. So, Arab trading. Non-partisan scholars describe Islamic thrust. A substantial part of Muslim settlements was achieved by conquest. From a perusal of standard secondary works alone, J.F. Richards has noted 90 instances of military conflict between the first Arab assault on Sindh and the commencement of Alauddin Khalji's Deccan campaigns. हाथ से हम पुल नहीं कर सकते, इसमें स्क्रॉल करना पड़ता है. He concludes that an examination of primary sources would reveal many more such incidents, and yet it has been an endeavor of Indian Marxists to negate this history of sustained resistance of Indians to Islamic incursions. Further, they have sought to underplay the Islamic abhorrence of idolatry and polytheism and its assault on the sacred spaces of this land. Though the numerical superiority of Hindus compelled the invaders to grant them status of dhimmis, the issue was too complex to be resolved and continued to exercise the Muslim mind throughout these centuries. Johann Friedman has observed that the conciliatory trend in Indian Islam was always weaker than the orthodox one. This is a very important point, okay? जो conciliation करने वाले जो Muslims है, और ये जो, या at least ये जो tendency है to say that no, it's okay, Hindus are also our brothers, etc. That trend is a minority within the Muslim community, okay? Which we all know, but even other intellectuals are also pointing this thing out. Johann Friedman is saying the conciliatory trend in Indian Islam was always weaker than the orthodox one, and the few rulers who adopted that so-called conciliatory tone, they failed to inspire their successors. So Akbar, the Ghazi of Chittor, Akbar, he tried to do some nice things, but his sons, at least his grandson, again decided no, हमको तो मारना है सबको. Okay, let me check out some comments again. SRS, Brahmin hate is real here. My family members hate them. Think Peshwas are coming to rule over Marathas. Be careful. This is level of discourse here. In such pathetic discourse, can't expect Hindu unity. I see. There's a lot of nuances to get into. Okay, Nihilist is saying Arun Shori wrote a whole book on Marxist historians. It's called Eminent Historians. Yeah. That's a legendary book. I read about that in Sitaram Goel's book, Sanjeev Sanyal's book. Uh, Many LGBTQ came out and supported Hindutva as they consider themselves proud Hindu, while trads don't want them to be part of our Hindu fold. Yeah. I've read a journal article paper saying that Peshwas were originally Jews. That's pretty fascinating. If the 50% invasion is trade, then who are they trading to? Yes. You'll have to ask Marxists that. Effacing, meaning affecting the harshness of. Okay, no, that means erasing. Effacing the harshness of Islamic rule in India has been the primary objective of Indian Marxist historians. Even rulers of the notoriety, such as Mahmud of Ghazni and Aurangzeb, have been recipients of their kind benevolence. R.C. Majumdar, another, the three biggest nationalist historians of the modern era are Bengalis. That's so hilarious. And the so-called historian, who is actually an economist who is inspiring people to get into history now, is also a Bengali. So R.C. Majumdar has drawn attention to a typical, though not so well-known, case of Marxist intellectual jugglery. A Comprehensive History of India Volume 5, published under the auspices of the Indian History Congress, he says, eulogizes, R.C. Majumdar says that this book published by the Indian History Congress, that book eulogizes the Bengal ruler Hussain Shah for his patronage of Bengali writers and Vaishnava saints, and asserts that the creative genius of the people reached its zenith under him. Okay, now now you check out and you'll understand a bit why Bengalis are very secular, the fake secular. This is one of the reasons, okay? I'll tell you why. Let's read these next two chapters and then you'll understand the Bengali ethos, why their minds have been screwed with, or how. The truth, however, Majumdar states, is that Chandidash, the greatest Vaishnava poet, preceded the time of Hussain Shah. So ये जो बोल रहे हैं कि हुसैन शाह के टाइम पे वैष्णवा पोएट्री का फिलोसफी का बहुत बढ़ावा हुआ, the biggest Vaishnava poet came actually before Hussain Shah, and the two poets of distinction, दो बड़े जो कवि थे वैष्णविज्म के, who lived in Hussain Shah's reign, enjoyed no royal favors. Okay. Further, the Vaishnava leader Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had no connection whatsoever with the Bengal Sultan. In fact, after he became a sannyasi, Chaitanya spent almost 20 years in exile in the Hindu kingdom of Orissa. When he once visited a locality near the residence of Hussain Shah, many people in Gaur feared for his safety and begged him to depart. Contemporary Vaishnava literature attests to the fact. Hostility, which means it proves. Contemporary Vaishnava literature attests to the hostility of the Qazi of Navadvip, who even prohibited kirtans. And yet, in defiance of such damning evidence, a comprehensive history of India, that book published by Indian History Congress, has no qualms in declaring that it is almost impossible, that book is saying, it is almost impossible to conceive of the rise and progress of Vaishnavism or the development of Bengali literature in this period without recalling to mind the tolerant and enlightened rule of the Muslim Lord of Gaur. So this is why most Bengali academics absolutely hate BJP and think they are absolutely wrong on their narrative on Muslims, or the BJP these days is not at all anti-Muslim, but their supporters, any narrative against Muslims is unjustified because Bengalis believed this happened, okay? Because they were taught these things, and since Bengalis are more into education, so the more you read, you will only become more of a leftist, because all scholarship is leftist. So the people who are not reading as much, people who are not into academics, people who are leading a real life day to day, and more so in the ground level, in the lower middle class and the lower class sections, they know what is up. They don't need to be told that there's a magical unity going on. They know what is going on in their lives, okay? So they end up being a little more right-wing than academics who are always far left, because they have read only far left things. And this is the best thing that has happened in Earth Culture Fest this time around, that every time a question has arrived, that is the usual question, that what can we as Indians do, what can we as Indians do to change this situation, etc. Or why isn't this being taught, why isn't that being taught, why isn't the government doing anything. Almost all of the guests who have been asked these things, they have only said that, अरे scholarship बनाओ, scholarship है कहाँ, उसका उसका किताब जो हम उसका पुस्तक हम नहीं पढ़ाएंगे रोमिला थापर का, उसको रिप्लेस किससे करेंगे? लैंड ऑफ सेवन रिवर्स से। उस लेवल का डिटेल्ड और हर एज के लिए वैसा डिटेल स्कॉलरशिप तो होना चाहिए। वो स्कॉलरशिप लाओ, फिर तो हम बोलेंगे कि रिप्लेस कर दो। So the need of the hour is fill up the space with Indic scholarship, okay? Indic books and Indic books and Indic books, ताकि जो लोग जिन लोगों को पढ़ना अच्छा लगता है वो पढ़े, आँख खुले, कोई बुक के बुक शॉप में जाए तो सिर्फ इंडिक विंग के बुक्स ही दिखे, जैसे कि आज थोड़ा बहुत हो रहा है। विक्रम संपत, संजीव सान्याल, जैसा दीपक का बुक्स भरा है हर जगह में, बट वैसा ही होना चाहिए। एंड व्हेन यू सम ऑफ यू गाइज आस्क मी दैट व्हाट कैन वी डू एटसेट्रा, व्हाट शुड बी डन एटसेट्रा, आई ओनली थिंक ऑफ कंटेंट, आई कैंट थिंक ऑफ एनीथिंग एल्स। मोस्ट ऑफ यू गाइज आर सो मच मोर knowledgeable about Indic topics than me. All of you just keep and filling the space with content that anyone opens YouTube, they say Indic content. Anyone opens a book, they say Indic content. That's what has happened all these years with leftists. That's how they have brainwashed people. Okay, Afin is saying, dude, I'll tell okay, someone tried to enter the video call all of a sudden. Such weird people. Dude, I'll tell everyone a funny thing what happened today. A Barelvi mullah was giving their Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb speech, but he said, "मैं हिंदू हूँ पर वह भी नहीं." Entire Muslim Twitter is now angry. Nice. Rana Prajapati is saying, no Bengali warriors from Hindu religion. Why? Which? Okay. No Bengali warriors. Is it the case? I'll have to think about it. Who are some of the great Bengali warriors? When did Bengali Hindus rule? Pal were Buddhist. Then before that were Shains were Kannada. Mallas were also not Bengali to begin with. Interesting. I'll have to think. Off the top of my head, no Bengali king comes to mind. Afin, okay, Afin. They started calling him Kakrelvi. Okay, nice. Afin, if you can remember some name of any famous Bengali king, let us know. There weren't enough legendary Bengali kings. That's why maybe so much. Samrat Pratapaditya Roy. No, Rohan. Pratapaditya Roy was not a great king. He was a zamindar. Jadunath Sarkar, who is not a leftist historian, and leftist historians both have researched enough and given enough evidence to show that he was not only not a king, he was not only just a zamindar. In fact, he tried to run away many times. I have all the quotes of that in my comment section of why Bengalis are secular. So they have done enough research to show that Pratapaditya Roy was not a king, he was a zamindar, and who was under the influence of Mughals to the full extent, and he gave himself the title Pratapaditya because it sounded nice. There's absolutely zero evidence to suggest that he was a great king of some sort. Yeah, it was not a kingdom. Pratapaditya Roy has been propped up mainly by the Bangla Pakho people, but there's no absolutely zero evidence to suggest any of that. Akbar was also tyrant. He was the first one to make Parsi a language of institutions. I see. Yeah. Such doublespeak forms the leitmotif of Marxist literature on medieval India. The Turkish invasions are glorified for effecting the political unification of India and ending her alleged isolation. Isolation में थे हम. मुगल ने आके हमको connected बना दिया पूरे दुनिया के साथ. While Mughal rule is presented as the country's second classical age. अच्छा, फर्स्ट क्लासिकल एज तब कब आया था? फर्स्ट क्लासिकल एज तो कभी नहीं आया था, ये सब बोलते हैं कि पहले तो कुछ अच्छा नहीं हुआ, मगर सेकंड क्लासिकल एज आया, डायरेक्टली सेकंड क्लासिकल एज आया, फर्स्ट क्लासिकल एज नहीं आया. Notwithstanding lofty declarations about free debate, Indian Marxists have, in classic Soviet style, relied heavily on state patronage and control of state-sponsored institutions to disseminate their version of history. Satish Chandra's Medieval India, the book which Meenakshi Jain is critiquing in this paper, was part of the Marxist offensive at the school level. A brief critique of the book, of the work is hereby presented, with a view to explain to the general reader the objections that non-Marxists have to Marxist historiography, and to share a larger concern for veracity and objectivity in the presentation of the past, howsoever unpalatable the past may be. Merely labeling such endeavors as saffronization cannot wish away the paramount question that confronts historians today. Should history be an honest record of the past, or should it sacrifice truth to be secular? And ये saffronization का बहुत important point है. When someone says that saffronization हो रहा है, the counter has to be always that, okay, if it's becoming saffron now, what was the color before? If the institution or the NCERT books do have the quality of taking in some color or the other with changing governments, so you are admitting then it's becoming saffron now. It wasn't saffron all these years. So what was the color before the saffron? Green, white, or red? It has been said that history is essentially the story of civilizational memory, which it is. That has certainly been the case in India. Both communities which constitute Hindus and Muslims today have varying memories of their historical journey. A Marxist diktat on intercommunity amity or unity in medieval India has abjectly failed. The Marxist conception of Hindu-Muslim unity has abjectly failed to alter civilizational memories. Civilizational memory jo tha wohi reh gaya. The gulf, the gap between the two communities even at the village level has been poignantly brought out by a Bengali writer who notes, the proud descendants of the Aryas who propounded the 6 systems of philosophy taught these to their pupils for 700 years after the advent of the Muslims, but never cared to know anything of the wonderful philosophical systems taught by the Maulvis in the madrasas of the neighboring village. So there was a gulf, there was no unity. The Muslim Maulanas, who did not hesitate to teach with delight the non-Islamic doctrines of Aristotle all their lives, never cared to inquire what was being taught in the neighboring Chatushpatis. Okay, interestingly, this author notes that some Maulvis were apparently teaching Aristotle. I don't know if it still happens or not today. Do you guys know anything about the syllabus, exact details of the syllabuses of madrasas? Do they teach Aristotle still, or it was just some coincidence back then? Maybe a one-off exception thing. What is still most strange is that while the Muslim doctors read the Arabic translations of the medical treatises of Charaka and Shushruta, they never knew that the original treatises were being taught in the Sanskrit tol of the neighboring village. Okay, interesting. They were teaching the Arabic version of Shushruta's medical things, but they didn't know that it was being taught in the nearby village in Sanskrit. On the other hand, the Hindu authors of medical treatises, to the best of my knowledge, never cared to know anything or take any advantage of the Unani system. It is often urged that Chaitanya sought to reconcile or harmonize the religious scriptures of the Hindus and Muslims, but I know nothing of it. This is a Marxist fake news again. So far as I know, the chief object of Chaitanya was to reform the Hindu society. The Muslim rulers, particularly the Mughal rulers, invited to their courts poets, scholars, philosophers and religious men from Iran and Turan. Turan is probably Tehran, right? But the Hindus never profited in any way from these learned foreigners who had not established any contact with the Hindus. R.C. Majumdar writes this. Quoted in R.C. Majumdar, History of Medieval Bengal, G. Bharadwaj. Now that the Marxists no longer occupy the commanding heights of Indian academia, they have a unique opportunity to assess the actual level of acceptability their work enjoys. Perhaps it's time to recognize that evasion cannot bury the past. It is only by confronting the past that it can be overcome. Okay, there's a very important footnote she makes here. This is very important. Unlike the Indian History Congress's Index of Errors. Now, Index of Errors is a paper published by all the Marxist historians we know of, criticizing Meenakshi Jain's work, okay, which Meenakshi Jain's books which were being taught when Atal Bihari Vajpayee came to power. So that's when the entire Marxist academia came in and nitpicked and tried to find faults with everything that Meenakshi Jain has written. So she's saying that unlike that, where the entire Marxist community came together to criticize me, this paper that she's writing right now is an individual effort. Any inadvertent misrepresentation may kindly be condoned in view of the seriousness. In view of the seriousness of the debate, proofreading oversights, spelling errors, minor discrepancies in definition of technical terms and other such trivialities have been overlooked so as not to derail the discussion. The emphasis is on substantive issues of interpretation and presentation, and even here, only samples of only samples of faulty reasoning and construction are enumerated. This in no way claims to be an exhaustive study. यहाँ पे सिर्फ samples ही है. Now we start the paper. Let me have a cup of water and coffee. Okay, Rohan is saying, all hail Shashanko of, Shashanko I've heard. King Shashanko of Bengal's Gaudiya kingdom. I always say Joy Shashanko in front of Bhimtas to piss them off because he was an anti-Buddhist ruler. Saved Shakta tradition in Bengal. I see. Interesting. We'll have to do some live streams on Shashanko. From Ibn al-Arabi, al-Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah, all take refuge in arguments of Aristotle. I see. The first cause argument, Kalam argument. All of them are rehashing Aristotle. Oh my god. I didn't know this. I have never read Aristotle, but I thought Aristotle is so liked so much by the Western Enlightenment era thinkers, the modernists. So I thought, so are they misrepresenting Aristotle in some way, or was Aristotle very Abrahamic then? Pre-Abrahamic. How is this nexus happening between mullahs and Aristotle? Okay. Now, what is scientific history? We are starting the paper now. Indian Marxists take immense pride in presenting what they claim is a scientific analysis of the past. Some examples of this methodology, so-called methodology, are given below. It may be seen that Marxist narrative is bedeviled by a non-Indian perspective, yes, which casts a shadow over its very veracity and motivations. हाँ, क्यों कर रहे हो ये? क्यों, किस लिए बोल रहे हो कि बिरयानी वहाँ से आया, आर्किटेक्चर वहाँ से आया, म्यूजिक वहाँ से आया, सब कुछ वहाँ से आया? ये क्यों? Motivation क्या है? 1. Though purported to be a text on medieval India, Satish Chandra's book begins with a discussion on Europe in the aftermath of the breakup of the Roman Empire, followed by a description of European feudalism, the Arab world from 8th to 10th centuries, and last but not least, East and Southeast Asia. Okay. That India does not merit even a subsection in the opening chapter perhaps best illustrates the Marxist alienation from the Indic perspective and their utter reliance upon foreign categories and periodizations for understanding events in India. This is 100% true because, as I was just discussing, that you'll see that leftists, general seculars, anyone remotely interested in history or very interested in history always will talk about Greek history, Roman history. सब कुछ पता है. Gladiator कब आए थे, Alexander ने कब क्या किया, Seneca कब आया, स्टोइसिज्म कब हुआ, सब पता है. मगर इंडियन हिस्ट्री के बारे में 1500 AD के पहले कुछ नहीं पता है, बिकॉज दिस इज द ethos that is cultivated in the academia and in the general mainstream media as well. Point 2. In chapter 3 on the Chola Empire includes a discussion on the Hoysaleshwara temple built by the Hoysalas, the Kannada compositions of Rashtrakuta king Amoghavarsa, and the Chalukya patronage of Telugu writers like Nanya. Okay. चोला एम्पायर को लेकर चैप्टर है, इसमें ये 3-4 सब घुसा दिया. चलो ये सब चोला के आसपास ही है, साउथ इंडियन है ना, साउथ इंडियन है तो ऐसे ही बोल दो साउथ इंडियन हिस्ट्री यही है, सब डाल दो चैप्टर 3 में. चैप्टर 5 पॉइंट नंबर 3, चैप्टर 5 में उस सतीश चंद्र के बुक में which is called the age of conflict circa 1000 AD to 1200 AD commences with a brief account of Mahmud of Ghazni's cataclysmic invasions of India and provides no details of the Hindu ruling houses with whom he clashed. This is 100% true. And who was mentioning this yesterday? Probably in Earth Culture Festival only. I think someone brought out this point. I think Omendro Ratnuji. He was saying that हाँ हमको तो पता है कि महमूद ऑफ गजनी आया, मोहम्मद घोड़ी आया, लड़ाई किससे हुआ, हराया किसको, रेजिस्टेंस किसने दिया, हिंदू किंग कौन था, हु वाज द अपोनेंट, ये किसी को नहीं पता है. ये कैसे हुआ? What is the intention behind these things? Muslim invaders are coming. We are being told that yes, Muslims came, invaded, brought culture, brought biryani. मगर resistance किसने दिया? ओके, इफ रेजिस्टेंस नहीं भी हो पाया, हारा किसने, इसका नाम ही हटा दिया पूरा हिस्ट्री बुक से, हमारे इथोस से, मेमोरी से. राजा दाहिर का नाम मैंने पहली बार सुना रिक्लेमिंग हिंदू टेम्पल्स, डॉक्टर चांदी सेनगुप्ता का, वो पढ़ते हुए. उसे ला, ओ देन बप्पा रावल, आई हर्ड हिज नेम फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम मे बी लास्ट ईयर. उसके नाम ही से तो रावलपिंडी नाम है. पिंड, दे से पिंड फॉर whoever house is called पिंड, राइट. तो रावल किंगडम और रावल लिनिएज का पिंड है वो, इसलिए नाम है रावलपिंडी, राइट. तो बप्पा रावल का नाम पढ़ाते नहीं है, राजा दाहिर सेन का नाम नहीं पढ़ाते. राजा दाहिर सरनेम वाज सेन, बाय द वे. So provides no details of the Hindu ruling houses with whom he clashed. Ghazni's invasions are abruptly followed by a discussion of the Rajput clan system. Ghazni's invasion के बारे में पढ़ाते हुए suddenly discussion shifts to राजपूतों का clan system, which breaks the narrative and detracts from the conflicts of the era under discussion. The chapter then moves on to the temple building tradition in North India between the 8th and 12th centuries, before returning to the subsequent conquests of Muhammad Ghori. A peculiar sequence, to say the very least. And ये जो peculiar sequence of writing history है, ये जो अजीब व गरीब, राजपूत क्लैन, मोहम्मद घोड़ी, टेम्पल बिल्डिंग, सडनली मोहम्मद गजनी आया, किसको हराया किसी को पता नहीं, ये जो अजीब लिखने का स्टाइल है, दिस इज वाई हिस्ट्री इज बोरिंग टू मोस्ट किड्स इन द स्कूल. ओके, ओनली पीपल हु स्टडी हिस्ट्री आर बाई चांस have the fascination for history even after reading such crap history, or they just want to get some graduation, have some job, और कुछ में इंटरेस्ट नहीं आ रहा है या और कुछ आ नहीं रहा है, तो थोड़ा हिस्ट्री में ही ग्रेजुएशन मास्टर्स कर लेते हैं. Chapter 6 is entitled The Delhi Sultanate circa 1200 to 1400 AD, the Mamluk Sultans. The chapter begins with an account of the reigns of Aibak, Iltutmish, Razia, Balban. It then jumps back to Iltutmish and the rulers who succeeded him in a discussion on the Mongols, which even includes Alauddin Khalji, who was certainly not a Mamluk. जिसको लेकर चैप्टर है उसको लेकर डिस्कशन नहीं हो रहा है. After this detour, the narrative returns to Iltutmish and Balban to discuss their eastern campaigns. Therefore, it again backtracks to Aibak, Iltutmish and Balban and their conflicts with Rajput Rajas. One fails to understand how such mixed chronology qualifies as scientific history. Chapter 7, titled The Delhi Sultanate the second time, 1200 AD to 1400 AD. Since the period up to Balban was already been covered in previous chapter, the dating is puzzling. A brief introduction of the Khaljis and Tughlaqs is followed in that order by an account of the expansion of the Sultanate in the north under Alauddin Khalji, the Deccan campaigns of the Khaljis and Tughlaqs, the market regulations and agrarian measures of Alauddin Khalji, the experiments of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and the rebellions he faced, the nature of his nobility, the reign of Firuz, and the invasion of Timur. The constant back and forth movement only serves to completely confuse the student. Yes, this is exactly what I just said. Yes, this is why history is absolute irritating and punishment of a subject when you are in school. I found civics more interesting than history in school. Okay. One funny thing was mentioned here. Rebellions. ये rebellions जो face कर रहे हैं ये सब राजा है, ये rebellion कौन कर रहा है, इसलिए हाँ, हमको तो सिर्फ पढ़ा जाता कि ये rebellion हुआ, क्वाश कर दिया, ये rebellion हुआ, सक्सेसफुल हो गया. rebellion क्यों हुआ था, कौन कर रहे थे, हिंदू मुस्लिम एंगल था कि नहीं, वो सब नहीं है कभी. Okay, Srihari is saying, I have cracked their code. You say why glorify biryani, they say to invoke pride and extend secular fabric. You bring up exploitation, they say hide it. Don't fear the Islamists. Yeah. Arun RM is saying Urdu is just replacement of Sanskrit words to Arabic words. AFN, right details to start would be who wrote these books with NGO and who all are involved. Yes. Okay. AFN, are you saying that to me? You collectivize people but as for 9-10 of the 12 Bhuya were all Hindus led by a fallen Rajput convert Isa Khan. But remember, there are Bengali speaking Hindus today because we fought. That is true. Okay. Uttishta Bharata, Raja Ganesh Which Raja Ganesh? Raja Ganesh is the guy whose son became a Muslim king, converted to Islam, and then has did the highest amount of conversions, right? Yeah, that Raja Ganesh was a little based. Nowhere near the likes of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, obviously, but he did at least some tried to do a little strong thing. Okay. Rana Prajapati, look up the channels Gaudiya Warriors, Gaudiya Berunda to know about Bengali Hindu warriors such as Raja Ganesh, Bishrup Sen ityadi. Okay, Afin is saying the issue is the Bengali language and Bengali identity is a later formation. Castes in Bengal say Kayastho, Anguri, Rajbangshi, Gorkha, etc. are older than the Bengali language. So be careful what you collectively identify people as. Yeah. But as far as 9 out of 10 of the 12 Bhuiya were all Hindus led by a fallen Rajput convert Isa Khan. Yeah, कुछ ना कुछ resistance तो हुआ ही था. या सी बंगाली राजा क्यों नहीं हुआ, उसमें बोलने में एक प्रॉब्लम तो ये है कि जैसे कि आज का मराठा आइडेंटिटी है, टुडे हु यू कंसिडर अ मराठी was a Marathi even in Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's time, but who was a Bengali and who is a Bihari today were not that distinct 500 at least 1000 years back तो था ही नहीं. तो वो डिस्टिंक्शन बहुत बाद में हुआ है, because Bihar, Orissa, Bengal were very syncretized. Okay. Now point 6, the following chapter 8 discusses government and economic social life under the Delhi Sultanate. Since the reigns of the Sayyids and Lodhis also fall in the Sultanate period, it is odd to find no mention of them before this discussion. The chapter begins with an account of the office of the Sultan, the central administrative apparatus and local government, and then moves on to the economic and social life of the period. The condition of the peasantry and rural gentry, the state of trade, industry and merchants are all described in some detail. So why are people like Satish Chandra writing these things? Because I think they also grew up reading only these things. Although that's not a fair argument, because how then are R.C. Majumdar, Jadunath Sarkar writing the opposite, taking the opposite way? Unexpectedly, however, the author returns to the Sultan and his nobles. Logically, this section should have been appended to the opening discussion of the Sultan. There follows a description of town life, a section on caste, social manners and customs. Thereafter, the nature of the state and religious freedom in the Sultanate are enumerated, when this should have formed part of the discussion on the Sultan, his government and nobility. There seems in all this a pervasive pattern of fragmenting the narrative to prevent the emergence of a coherent perspective on the nature of the state under the Sultanate rulers. This is bang on. This is absolutely correct what Meenakshi ji has pointed out. See her observation. ये अजीब मिक्स्ड अप जम्बल्ड अप हिस्ट्री क्यों पढ़ा रहा है? ताकि आप कुछ नैरेटिव इससे समझ नहीं सके, इससे कोई स्टोरी, कोई पैटर्न, कोई कुछ भी कॉम्प्रीहेंड नहीं कर सके आप. That is why it is being done, so that you are not able to do. They don't want you to comprehend Indian history, okay? That is why people hate history when they study it in school. Chapter 10. Struggle for empire in North India 1, circa 1400 to 1525 AD. This chapter opens with a reference to Timur's sacking of Delhi in 1398. Hence, it would be logical to follow this with the Sayyids, since the founder of this dynasty had been handed charge of Delhi by Timur himself. This could have been followed by an account of the successor of Lodi dynasty and the various kingdoms struggling for hegemony. What we have instead is an account of Eastern India, then Western India, in the course of which we come across Ibrahim Lodi. The Sharki kingdom of Jaunpur follows. Sharki. These Sharkis of Jaunpur were probably the people who invaded Bengal also. After the Raja Ganesh's Muslim son, after his grandson, I think, lost. Yeah. Shamsuddin Araki, something Uddin Sharki was his name. The Sharki kingdom of Jaunpur follows, wherein we encounter another Lodi ruler Bahlul. Only after this extended digression do we come to the Sayyids and the Lodhis. Digression Barbar. Chapter 11 is titled Cultural Development in India. Since the Bhakti movement predated Sufism in India, it should have been discussed first, rather than the other way around. अच्छा, पहले Sufism discuss किया, उसके बाद Bhakti discuss किया. Chapter 12. Sher Shah's Rajput policy makes no mention of his treatment of the Rajputs of Raisen. Instead, in the subsection entitled Contribution of Sher Shah, after listing his measures to improve law and order, trade and commerce, his custom regulations, currency reforms, administrative restructuring, land revenue measures, reorganizing of the army, judicial reforms and architectural achievements तो बोलना ही है. There is a brief reference to his treacherous murder of the Raisen Rajputs with the proviso that Sher Shah was not a bigot in this religious sphere. वो अच्छे आदमी थे, ऐसे ही मार दिया राजपूत को, सिर्फ इकोनॉमिक रीजंस था या ऐसे ही राइवल था इसलिए मारा. नेवर थिंक शेर शाह वाज अ बैड मुस्लिम. ओके, सो ऑल्सो नोटिस दैट शेर शाह का ये एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में जो इतना कुछ सिखाया है, जो कि अफगान था, उसे ये सब पता कैसे चला? बुक में पढ़ा? कहाँ से सीखा? कहाँ से ये? Because there was already a system in place of great governance in India for thousands of years. वो उस सिस्टम में अपने लोग डाल रहा था और फिर पॉलिसी थोड़ा बहुत ट्वीक कर रहा था, ट्वीक करके एंटी हिंदू बना रहा था. अगर ये सब स्ट्रक्चर्स पहले से ही था, नहीं तो ये सब और कुछ कहीं और पे उखाड़ क्यों नहीं पाए? इंडिया में ही आके सब अच्छे बिरयानी और आर्किटेक्चर वाले कैसे बन जाते हैं? This kind of whitewashing and obfuscation of the state's dealings with native rulers and subjects is a hallmark of Marxist historiography. Chapter 13 on Akbar is followed by Chapter 14 on the Deccan policy of the Mughals up to 1656, even though the reigns of Jahangir and Shah Jahan are dealt with in the subsequent Chapter 15. Chapter 15 commences with a resume of Jahangir's reign, which is followed by a discussion of the foreign policy of the Mughals from the time of Akbar to the reign of Aurangzeb. After this comes an account of the reforms introduced in the Mansabdari system by Jahangir and Shah Jahan, and finally a discussion on the nature of the Mughal army. Such liberties with chronology are obviously part of a concerted attempt to prevent an integrated view of the era emerging in the minds of young students. Yes, ये जो integrated view of the era अब हमको है, it is because we have moved on from these books. ये integrated view तब होगा जब कोई संदीप सान्याल का Land of Seven Rivers पढ़ेगा. You'll see connections that, oh, okay, this is why. Oh, so this is the narrative. Okay, so this is how these things led to these things. Sandeep Sanyal writes like that. The following chapter 16 deals with economic and social life under the Mughals. So Aurangzeb, who is very much part of the dynasty, comes up only in chapter 18. It is also surprising to find a discussion on the ethnic composition of the Mughal nobility inserted in the middle of this chapter. Economic and social life है इसलिए middle of this chapter, when it should surely have formed part of the narrative of the state under the various rulers. Be that as it may, this surreptitious insertion also contradicts the assertions made in the main body of the text that the respective rulers gave generous representation to native groups in the nobility. Okay, ये पहले बोल दिया था, मगर अब खुद को contradict कर रहा है. Chapter 18 discusses cultural and religious developments under the Mughals, and again before the discussion on the reign of Aurangzeb. Cultural and religious developments भी औरंगजेब को अभी तक लाया ही नहीं, उसके पहले ये सब डिस्कस कर दिया. Were they trying to avoid Aurangzeb in some way? It is no surprise if at the end of this one is left unsure of even the basic chronology of the period. Yeah, ये तो हमारे साथ होता ही है. ये सब पढ़ के अभी आपको एकदम रट्टा मार के पूरा ईयर्स आपको मगअप करना होगा, नहीं तो आपके दिमाग में वैसे कोई पिक्चर विजुअलाइजेशन आप नहीं कर पाएंगे कि अच्छा ये राजा ने ये किया था, ये राजा ने ये किया था, उसके बाद ये राजा आया. ऐसा नहीं है, पूरा तो मिक्स्ड अप क्रोनोलॉजी है. तो आपको द ओनली वे टू रिमेंबर द years is by absolutely mugging them up and not by understanding them. Okay, let's check out some comments again. Kanwar Pal Singh Gill is saying, just finished listening to Dr. Jain's podcast on Vad on her new book Hindus of Hindustan. According to her, it's her most important book so far. Okay, Kanwar ji, when did this podcast happen? I have seen a bits of the earlier podcast that Meenakshi Jain did with Vad. Is it a recent one? ओके, निहिलिस्ट इज सेइंग जो आर्किटेक्चर तोड़ा उसके बारे में नहीं बोलते. यस, आर्किटेक्चर तोड़ने का भी इनपुट तो लाया है बाहर से. Okay, Rohan is saying who are silent. Afin is saying why are some live comments not showing? I mean, we know of polytheist Arabs escaping to India. Yeah. So Rohan is saying yes, those were Arab traders in pre-Islamic Arab. Yeah, pre-Islamic Arabs to the, but even Muslim Arabs, some did come peacefully in Kerala area. Okay. They never talk about how Hindu temple art became stagnant because of this Islamist destruction and never developed after Muslim invasion. This also led to degradation of architecture jatis. Okay, there's a lot of talk about architecture because a lot of people have a comment on architecture because you can see it and generally understand that yeah, this is this way and this is that way. There's a clear difference in architecture that you can see. But this is not talked about. What Nihil has just mentioned here, it's not talked about enough in the field of music. Okay, see, this is what I feel pretty strongly about, because I am someone who specializes in Western classical music. Okay, even though I have never learned it, but my main go-to genre for any music, or you can say it's my forte, my strength in arrangement and composition is orchestral work. Okay, now orchestral arrangement, all those 20 violins, 50 people singing, then cellos, basses, timpanis, etc., harp, those kinds of arrangements, none of that is Indian. Okay, I mean there may have been some ancient syncretism, but what orchestral music we understand today, there's no Indian influence in that, right? At least not now. And Indian classical musically itself, arrangement wise, is completely different from Western classical. Why? There's one clear distinction. Okay, इंडियन क्लासिकल में सिर्फ लीड मेलोडी होता है, एक मेलोडी, एक आदमी बैठ के सितार बजाएगा, एक आदमी बैठ के सरोद बजाएगा, एक आदमी बैठ के गाएगा, पीछे सिर्फ तानपुरा ऐसे बजता रहेगा और ताल रखने के लिए तबला बजेगा अच्छे से. that is absolutely brilliant and awesome to hear, takes years of dedication, etc. Same thing is done by Western classical musicians on in their personal life, right? They also practice since they're 5 years old. They start learning and they learn it their entire lives. They keep improving. Dedication or brilliance में कोई difference नहीं है Western classical और Indian classical में. Where the difference is that Westerners in the 1500s, 1600s, when they developed this Western classical music, ऐसा classical music है कि which is just 300 years old. तो 300 साल पहले ही ये Western classical orchestration आया. ऑर्केस्ट्रेशन में क्या डिफरेंस है एज अपोज टू इंडियन क्लासिकल? इंडियन क्लासिकल में अगर 50 लोग भी एक साथ गा लेते हैं, दैट्स नॉट द सेम एज ऑर्केस्ट्रेशन. ओके, द ओनली थिंग डिफरेंट इन वेस्टर्न क्लासिकल एंड इंडियन क्लासिकल इज द आइडिया ऑफ हार्मोनी. वी डोंट हैव हार्मोनीज इन ईस्टर्न क्लासिकल. और वेस्टर्न क्लासिकल में हार्मोनी तो है भी, कॉर्ड्स भी है, और ये सब एट अ टाइम एक लीड मेलोडी नहीं बजेगा. एक लीड मेलोडी की बजेगा भी तो उसको असिस्ट करने के लिए और भी पैरेलल मेलोडीज बजेगा. ये जो आइडिया है, यही डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए वो लोग 200, 150, 100 लोगों को लेते हैं एक ऑर्केस्ट्रा में, ताकि सब मिलके एक चीज़ तैयार करें. दिस इज वेस्टर्न क्लासिकल म्यूजिक विच डज नॉट हैपन इन इंडियन क्लासिकल म्यूजिक. एंड आई वुड से दैट इज अ मोर एडवांस्ड कॉन्सेप्ट arrangement wise, not composition wise. Okay, arrangement wise that's a more advanced concept than Indian classical. Indian classical में arrangement क्या है कि आप एक lead melody बजाएंगे, मैं उसके साथ तबला या तानपुरा बजा दूंगा. Western classical में ये elaborate arrangement करना पड़ता है कि 300 लोगों में कौन कौन क्या क्या बजाएगा, ये सब कुछ अरेंजर को, वो ऑर्केस्ट्रा कंडक्टर को सोचना पड़ता है. And why didn't this happen in India? Magically ये mysteriously 1600-1700 साल के टाइम पे यूरोप में ही क्यों होता है? ऑब्वियसली बिकॉज ऑफ द सेम रीजंस. हमारा स्टैग्नेशन शुरू हो गया मुगलों के वजह से, और उनका इकोनॉमिक बढ़ोतरी हो रहा है, इसलिए दे गेट द टाइम टू रिसर्च मोर ऑन म्यूजिक. दैट इज वाई वेस्टर्न क्लासिकल म्यूजिक happens, and at least orchestration advances, music advances as a whole in Europe, and our music, which we were doing such brilliant work in Carnatic classical, North Indian classical, we stop developing it further, we stop evolving it further. It is my claim, 100% guaranteed, that if we had prevented Islamic invasions, even orchestration would be invented in India. We would have done harmonies and 200 people's orchestra with sitars, 20 sitars playing, 20 tablas playing, 20 sarods, 15 tanpuras, 20 some other Indian classical instrument. That's how we would have further developed our musical arrangement. Okay, so what Nihilist was saying here, that Temple architecture in Bengal stagnated. That's the same way Indian music arrangement, development, research also stagnated because of those times. Srihari is saying Satish Chandra deserves Oscar more than we deserve KRK. Okay. So what is harmony? Harmony का एक एग्जाम्पल मैं दे सकता हूँ कि वो मैंने जो अरेंजमेंट एनालिसिस किया था सोजू गादा सुजू मल्ली के सॉन्ग का, गरुड़ गमन वृषभ वाहना मूवी का, कन्नड़ मूवी का, उस सॉन्ग में शुरू में जो मेलोडी है कि महादेवा 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 महादेवा, ये है लीड मेलोडी. उसके साथ पीछे से हल्के से हारमोनी बज रहा है महादेवा 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 महादेवा. ये दोनों मेलोडी सेम है मगर डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ. अगर इस दोनों मेलोडी का सा हम ढूंढे तो दोनों का सा अलग स्केल में है मगर दोनों पैरेलली बज रहे हैं, जिससे कि एक जो कम वॉल्यूम में है वो उस लीड मेलोडी का हारमोनी बन जा रहा है. दिस इज अ वेस्टर्न कॉन्सेप्ट. दिस वाज डन इन वेस्ट ओनली बिकॉज दे हैड द टाइम, इकोनॉमी and proper social stability to develop these things further and research further. We were then having famines and fighting Muslim invaders for survival and paying jizya. That's why we could not do this. FN is saying no, the first Muslims came to Gujarat. There is literally a mosque there that has this Qibla towards Jerusalem and not Mecca. They were made while Muhammad was alive and Quran incomplete. Yes, that's the second oldest mosque in the world. Pinji, please check Dan Brown. He has falsified what you claimed. Even actually Sanjeev Sanyal mentions this. This is pretty a legit comment I've remembered. That's the second oldest mosque in India, right? Okay, interesting comment section going on discussing Indian Muslims origins in India. Okay, Kanwar Pal Singh says the book is on cultural continuity of Bharat based on the Tirtha trails across the length and breadth of Bharat. Okay, and now we'll return to the paper. Okay, examples of Soviet-style purging of Indian history. And remember, this was a considered and declared obvious position in Bengal. Some people might know this, some people might not know this, that the Bengal communist government gave specific directions to schools to eliminate all instances of, in the West Bengal board education, that not the NCERT, to eliminate all mentions of Muslim invaders' violence on Hindu kings. That was their declared position. I think someone, Anand Ranganathan or someone, had posted the exact government letter also that you are not supposed to teach those history. Okay, that was called Ashuddho Itihash. They were supposed to teach only Shuddho Itihash. Shuddho Itihash is the made up a notion that Muslim kings were benevolently promoting Vaishnavism, Vaishnav philosophy, etc. Srihari is saying, think of harmony as just playing a single chord instead of all melody notes in a measure. Yes. Nihilist says, same argument Tharoor gives in Era of Darkness about railways and other technological advancement during British era. According to him, these developments would happen if British never ruled us. Exactly. Purging history of its inconvenient moments having been a venerable tradition in the communist world, it comes as no surprise that India's past too is considerably spruced up. Whole kingdoms and dynasties that flourished between the death of Harsha in AD 647 and the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate in AD 1206 find no mention in the text. Yes. See, this is a very, very important point. 647 AD में हर्षा का मृत्यु हुआ, 1206 में दिल्ली सल्तनत हुआ, 647 से 1206 के बीच में क्या हुआ? That finds no mention in the text. This half millennium dominated by vigorous new ruling houses was an age of efflorescence of monumental temples, literary flowering and intense philosophical speculation. And yet, so much of that defining period of Indian history is simply effaced. That means whitewashed, eliminated. Among rulers, dynasties and events missing. So, now Meenakshi Jain is going to do a better job of writing Satish Chandra's book than Satish Chandra himself. So she does her job. She does his job now. So what did Satish Chandra miss? He missed out the Gahadavalas. I don't know how to pronounce it. A leading ruling house of North India. This is the problem with English words actually, English spellings. We don't know how to pronounce it. It could be Gahodavala, Gahadavala, Gahadavala. It can be many things. a leading ruling house of North India in the forefront of the struggle against the Turkish invasions. They are also credited with a massive program of temple construction in Ayodhya. One of the most important Hindu law compendium, the Kritya Kalpataru, was written in their reign. Wow. But it is only the last ruler of this line, Chandra, who merits an unflattering mention. The book says, perhaps he was not a very capable warrior because he had already suffered a reverse at the hands of the Sena king of Bengal. Okay, that's a weird way of looking at it. So, this is the first time I'm hearing of this dynasty, Gahadavalas. Okay, remember this name. The Chandelas of Bundelkhand are dismissed in one sentence on page 39. Believed to be of Gond tribal origin. Okay, RRR ka NTR ka role. Believed to be of Gond tribal origin, they embarked on a career of greatness under Yasovarman, who finds no mention in the text. A reputed warrior, Yasovarman is even said to have allied with China to halt the onward march of the Turks. His successors aided the Shahi kings in their endeavor to repulse the Turks. Vidyadhar was the greatest of the Chandela kings. He killed the last Pratihara ruler of Kannauj for surrendering to Mahmud of Ghazni without a fight. Acha. Surrender karega ye le. The Chandelas were patrons of the Sanskrit literature Bhavabhuti, as well as of Vakpati, and were also the builders of the magnificent Khajuraho temples. The Paramaras of Malwa, who included Bhoja, Raja Bhoja, one of the greatest kings of medieval India. During his reign of half a century, he thrice collaborated with other kings of North India in the drive against the Turks. So see, there was the civilizational unity, the seeds of that civilizational unity, the germs of that civilizational unity was starting to occur finally, and it took shape in full-fledged only under Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He was also a formidable scholar and established a Sanskrit college within the precincts of the Saraswati temple, the present disputed Bhojashala at Dhar, Madhya Pradesh. Eminent Chauhan kings like Ajay Raja, founder of the city of Ajmer. Okay, Ajay Meru is Ajmer. Okay, then Arno Raja and Vigraha Raja the fourth, Visaladeva, all of whom worsted the Turks. Vigraha Raja the fourth, Visaladeva, incidentally established the Jain college at Ajmer, wow, which was subsequently converted into the Arhai Din Ka Jhompra mosque by Kutubuddin Aibak. Wow. Jain college तोड़ के mosque बना दिया. The Kalachuris of Tripuri, an ancient ruling house whose earlier seat of power was Mahishmati on the Narmada. The great kings of this dynasty included Kokkala, Gangya Deva and Karna. Kalachuris, कभी नाम ही नहीं सुना है. त्रिपुरी है कहाँ? Earlier seat of power was Mahishmati on the Narmada. ये माहिष्मती भी कहाँ है और त्रिपुरी भी कहाँ है? Then Jaisingha Siddharaja, regarded as the greatest of the kings of Gujarat, never heard his name. A renowned warrior and builder of the Rudra Mahakala temple at Siddhapura, also never heard of it. He was also the patron of the famous Jain scholar Hemachandra. This man I have heard of. Also missing are Kumarapala, renowned as the last great royal proponent of Jainism, and Naiki Devi, Queen Regent, who defeated the forces of Muhammad of Ghur near Mount Abu. Never heard of her. So you see how misogynistic Marxist history is. Do you notice that? All of their descriptions and glorifications are of Muslim invaders, and they are all men. At least gender bias और women emancipation के narrative से तो कुछ हिंदू महिलाओं का रानियों का नाम डाल सकते थे, वो भी नहीं डाला. The famous Kolkata dynasty of Kashmir, which boasted of rulers like Lalitaditya, which we now know of in the last 2 years, I guess, who made the dynasty the most powerful in India after the Guptas, Avantivarman. After the Guptas, yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Kolkata Empire was from around Turkey, Iran area, up till Assam or Bengal. The entire of northern Akhand Bharat was Raja Lalitaditya Muktapira's kingdom. Avantivarman, the sagacious ruler of the Utpala dynasty, who commissioned an engineering project for the drainage and irrigation of the valley, which provided much relief from floods, besides increasing the land under cultivation, also goes unsung. Yes, ये irrigation और flood and drainage ये सब management करना, ये भी अगर कोई मुगल आके भी करे, it's not his achievement, nor is it Avanti Varman's achievement. He definitely should be credited for implementing those ideas, but these ideas were always there, because remember Harappa also had those ideas. So it's not like Mughals came and created for the first time a significant coherent governance model. The Sena kings of Bengal, Vijay Sena and the famous Ballal Sena, are ignored. Ballal Sen. So actually there are lots of Shen influences in Bengal. How much Karnataka has inspired Bengal, you'll see that Joydever Mela, there's a famous fair that happens in Shantiniketan, I think. That Joydev was actually a famous Bengali poet. His name was Joydev Shen. He was a poet in the Shena kingdom, in the Shen court. So he was also obviously a Kannada descendant. So Joydev Shen. And then the greatest singer-songwriter who has written on only devotional songs on Ma Kali, Ramprasad Shen. Ramprasadi music, it's called Ramprasadi Shongit. So even he is Ramprasad Shen. So he's basically, you could equate him with Purandara Dasaru in a way. Not in every way. Purandara Dasaru was much more of a significant personality in Kannada culture. But Ramprasad Sen is extremely significant for anyone who believes in God in India, in Bengal, that is. And he was also a descendant of Kannada people. The Shailodbhava dynasty of Orissa, never heard of them. The Karas, renowned for having had at least 5 female rulers. The Kesaris, the Eastern Gangas, and the later Eastern Gangas, builders of the famous Lingaraja, Jagannath, and Sun Temple, never heard of them, also do not merit attention. The 3 temples are merely mentioned in a survey on temple building in North India. I'll tell you how much this is true. Up till a few months back, I had never Googled it, of course. It was so difficult to find in common knowledge anything about who made those temples. I thought the Sun Temple was actually lost in time, that we don't even know who made it. Maybe aliens made it, like Egypt, etc., like the History Channel says. So I don't know why ये हटा के क्या मिला. Sun Temple किसने बनाया था, इस ये बोलने में क्या जाता था मार्क्सिस्ट का. The Chalukyas of Kalyani, including their distinguished ruler Vikramaditya VI, patron of scholars like Bilhana and Vigyaneshwara, are also missing. So these are the list of all the people who are missing from Satish Chandra's text, okay? Rudrama Devi of the Kakatiya dynasty, who ruled for almost 35 years, does not find even a listing. Rudrama Devi is pretty famous, and there's, I think, a Telugu movie on Rudrama Devi. I think the director of Rudrama Devi is now directing his movie. Shakuntala is going to release. I planned to watch Shakuntala, but the CGI is so bad. Of course, the budget is very low, but that director still hasn't learned the application of the CGI like Rajamouli has. So that's a different skill to learn. That's why I won't be watching Shakuntala. But that movie Shakuntala, interestingly, has insanely great Western classical orchestration background score in the trailer, at least. Okay, that's pretty interesting. It completely departs from the Bahubali kind of music, which is very Indian, as well as has the most important, impactful things that you can take from Western classical music. But this is the Queen Rudrama Devi, on whom there's a Telugu movie. Okay, the text ignores the Satish Chandra's book ignores the sheer dynamism of Indian society. अरे dynamism है, ये acknowledge करेंगे तब ना dynamism को depict करेंगे. इनका तो point ही है कि dynamism है नहीं कोई. सिर्फ यही है कि ब्राह्मण सबको अत्याचार कर रहा है, यही है, और कुछ नहीं हो रहा है इंडिया में. The text ignores the sheer dynamism of Indian society during the centuries. The movement of tribal groups from forest and pastoral settings to settled agriculture, their contribution to state formation, the rise and integration of tribal and local deities to regional and all India status, the economic integration of the country through mobile communities of itinerant traders and merchants, are all overlooked in preference for a static and stereotype rigidity that has long been rejected by modern scholarship. The persistent participation of Hindu peasants in warfare throughout this period is obliterated as part of the attempt to project Hindu society as a closed unit in which multiple occupations were ruled out and movement impossible. Okay, full disclosure, this is the first time I'm coming to know that at least in medieval or later medieval times, when casteism was already rigid and birth based, even then farmers were taking part in warfare. This is something I did not know. This is something that Meenakshi Jain ji is claiming here. Okay, this is brand new news to me. I thought only Kshatriyas were fighting. The evidence of the growth of urban centers and a flourishing economy in the kingdoms of the Pratiharas, Paramaras, Shahamanas, अरे इनका किसी का भी नाम नहीं सुना है, among others, are all suppressed with a view to validate the discredited thesis of the Marxist historian Professor R.S. Sharma that trade and economy suffered a distinct decline in the 3 centuries after the death of Harsha. Okay. अब ये भी narrative है कि हिंदू राजाओं ने इकोनॉमी का सत्यानाश कर दिया था हर्षा के बाद. Okay, for those of you who are joining now, Nihilist Trader has recommended this paper. You all can all recommended such nice interesting papers that we can discuss on Thursday nights. Today we are doing it only because my book has not arrived yet. Okay, let's check out some comments again. Kanwar Pal Singh is saying, incidentally was narrating the story of Nike Devi and her valor to some kids. Oh, good. Is Kanwar Pal Singh, are you the person in your DP, or is that some other retired army general or somebody? Are you that old person? Then I'll address you like that, or I'll address you like you are my age. Rohan Chhatra, master that Surjo Jain, famous freedom fighter from East Bengal. Yeah, Rohan. Actually, if you come to the 1900s, then we have plenty of people. Then we have Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo Ghosh hai aur kaun chahiye? But he was talking about kings. Kings में उतना significant वैसा कोई नहीं मिल रहा है. Rohan is saying, Dada, yes, I studied in West Bengal board. No mention of Islamic invasion in West Bengal history book. No mention of direct action day. Yeah, Noah Khali, etc. Of course. Even though, Rohan, remember, West Bengal board is actually a little more focused towards Indian history than so much of world history that we study in ISC board. They focus on Indian history, but they don't teach Islamic invasion. They pretend like Islam was always here. That's why those Bangladeshis are now saying that Hidayat, Jaiz, these words were always in Bengal. It's the Sanskrit Pandits who came and used Kshatriyas to force Sanskritized Bengali down people's throats. Okay, Apu is saying Jai Shri Radha Krishna, Jai Shri Radha Krishna. Uttisha Bharata is saying Gaharwal is the pronunciation. Okay, कौन से में? पर फिर देख लेते हैं. Gaharwal. Okay, you are probably talking about something. Okay. Okay, now the next things that Satish Chandra has missed, but what Meenakshi Jain is pointing it out to him. There is simply no discussion on the nature of the polity established by Prophet Muhammad and its dependence on the twin concepts of jihad and ummah. अरे ये होगा तो तब तो सतीश चंद्र RIP सतीश चंद्र हो जाएगा. The dhimmi system and the status granted to non-Muslims requires honest discussion, given that the bulk of the period grapples with the exclusivist nature of the state established by Islamic rulers in India. This I will disagree with Meenakshi Jain ji, because I don't think you can be that detailed in class 11 history, because now you are not just saying that Islamic invaders were bad. Now you are pointing it out that Islamic invaders were bad because this is what their prophet said. That is too much for a class 10-11 kid, I think. ये थोड़े बड़े होने के बाद के लिए छोड़ देना चाहिए, I think. Because there are Muslim kids in the classroom also, they will know that, okay, not only my ancestors were bad, my religion is also bad. So what are we going to do with now patriotic Muslims who don't have confidence in their own self? This is, I think, a bit of a stretch. Tracing it to Prophet Muhammad, I think this should be taught in the graduation or master's level. The Arab invasion of Sindh is not only eclipsed from Marxist history. Yes, I had no knowledge of. Actually, I didn't even know where Sindh was until a few years back. I had heard of Sindhis, and there's a famous Bengali actor who is a Sindhi, and I've heard him say, and I've heard other Sindhis say that we are nomads. We don't know where we came from. We are all different kind. We are everywhere. We speak all languages. We don't have a home. They say it kind of in a fun way. They have moved on from their past trauma, but they are all descendants of the people who were kicked out from Sindh. So Arab invasion of Sindh is not only eclipsed from Marxist history, so too are 4 centuries of stiff Hindu resistance in Sindh, Kabul and Zabul. Only the Hindu Shahis from the time of Jayapala are mentioned. And remember, who was doing the resistance in Sindh? Raja Dahir Sen, Sen. Okay, the iconoclasm of Subuktigin. Iconoclasm means the hatred for physical religious icons. So ये मूर्ति देखा मार दो तोड़ दो, icon पसंद नहीं हमें. That is iconoclasm. The iconoclasm of Subuktigin, the father of Mahmud Ghazni, as recorded by the chronicler Abu Nasir Udbi, is overlooked. I don't know why this needs to be mentioned in this book. The sheer number of Hindu victims of Islamic invaders has been carefully exercised. 50,000 defenders lost their lives in just one attack of Mahmud of Ghazni on Somnath, which surely deserves an acknowledgement. Yeah, this should have been taught. Somnath, it may be recalled, was destroyed several times thereafter. And why? Because they believed, the Arabs who were coming here, Muslim Arabs, they thought that the pre-Islamic deities, pagan deities, Al-Manat, Allat and Al-Uzza were hiding in Somnath, because they knew of Somnath so much. Somnath was like an aspirational model and a cultural symbol even in pre-Islamic Arabia, that they thought that, okay, now that we are not safe anymore, now that we are going to become Muslim, at least our goddesses will be safe in that famous Somnath temple that we have heard of, that our ancestors or our friends have gone there to trade, etc. Every Arab who came here, always, not pre-Islamic Arab, everyone who came here always worshipped in the Somnath. Syed Salar Masood, Mahmud's nephew, Mahmud of Ghazni's nephew, who launched a fresh series of Turkish attacks on India. Usko mention nahi kiya. The highly refined system of racial discrimination practiced by the Turks in India, and the fact that the so-called egalitarian message of Islam did not win any converts in the 12th century. Iltutmish's destruction of the Mahakala Deva temple in Ujjain is ignored. Indeed, there is an unmistakable tendency to overlook acts of Muslim vandalism. Richard Eaton has admitted, okay, iske naam se Eaton College hoga. Richard Eaton has admitted that at least 80 temples were destroyed by Muslim iconoclasts, although this is regarded as a ridiculously low figure in some quarters. Even the major instances in his list are skipped over in the textbook. Yeah, temple destruction to hua kabhi suna hi nahi BJP power mein aane se pehle. The text, only temple destruction I had heard of, okay, that was Babri Masjid, that's a mosque destruction. The text nowhere mentions that all Delhi sultans sought investiture from the Caliph in the Ottoman Empire as part of their commitment to the wider world of Islam. हाँ, ये पढ़ाना भी class 11 के बच्चों के लिए थोड़ा ज़्यादा होगा. Alauddin Khalji's execution of 3,000 muqaddams during the campaign against Chittor. Firoz Tughlaq's attack on Orissa temples is briefly referred to, but surely it should be specified that it was the famous Jagannath temple that was the victim of his iconoclastic fury. The killings of thousands of inhabitants of the region is The killings of thousands of inhabitants of this region is similarly expunged. The Vijayanagar kingdom's great scholar Shayanacharya, whose commentaries on Vedic texts are highly rated even today, finds no place in the text. Yes, and I heard of Shayanacharya's name, I think last month, because I'm listening to that commentary and explanation of Rig Veda from a Swamiji Maharaj of Ramakrishna Mission. I don't think he's Bengali, but he speaks in his YouTube channel is in Bengali. Swami Samarpanananda. He has 42 videos in a playlist, all of about 1 hour long, discussing just the Rig Veda. There I heard the name of Shayanacharya. And then in the Bengali Rig Veda I'm reading, there also I read that Shayanacharya is a great commentator on Vedic texts. So he was also in the Kannada Vijayanagar kingdom, which I didn't know. Which I just found out. I didn't know before this that Shayanacharya is from Vijayanagar kingdom. Even Purandara Dasa was in the Vijayanagar kingdom. The deportation of thousands of peasants across the Indus as part of the pacification of the countryside is ignored. Today we will finish this paper. Akbar's massacre of 30,000 peasants. Yeah, ये 30,000 to 40,000 में है. ये तो कभी पढ़ाया नहीं जाता है. Akbar's massacre of 30,000 peasants who had taken shelter at Chittor fort and his letting 300 elephants loose on the besieged people there. Fuck. हाथी छोड़ दिया लोगों पे. This I never knew. The author merely says many peasants from the surrounding area were massacred. अच्छा, ये तो हमको भी नहीं पढ़ा, ये एटलीस्ट CBSE में पढ़ा है. I never heard of any people dying in Chittor, in IC board. Further, the giant statues of the Rajput warriors Jaimal and Patta, the emperor had erected outside Agra fort, were intended as a mark of humiliation, not honor, as the author would have us believe. The political motivations that dictated Akbar's Rajput and religious policies are also underplayed. Jaimal and Patta, the emperor, had erected outside Agra fort, were intended as a mark of humiliation. Okay, why were they erected as a mark of humiliation? We won't know unless we read Meenakshi Jain's work, but this I'll have to leave aside. But this is why, remember, Akbar was called Chittor ka Ghazi, the Ghazi of Chittor. Ghazi means someone who takes up arms and kills non-Muslims. The chapter on Akbar is also remarkable for the absence of Sheikh Ahmed Sirhindi, the leading revivalist thinker of the time. Akbar's close links with the Chishti order, his attempts to placate orthodox Muslim opinion, till as late as 1579. The secular Akbar hua, wo 1579 ke baad hua. Further, the discussion on Akbar fails to explain to students that the Mansabdari system gave the Mughal state a strong military base. It is surely significant that almost 60% of the total Jama under Akbar, Jama means assessed state revenue, 60% of the total Jama under Akbar was spent on maintaining a military establishment in an era which saw no foreign invasions. Foreign invasion हुआ ही नहीं मगर military budget बढ़ा दिया with the money coming from the Mansabdari system. Okay, let's check out some comments. Nihilist is saying, in 2014, Modi did saffronization of history and made Muslims foreign invaders. They were actually aboriginals of India. Yes. Is story of pre-Islamic idols in Somnath historical? Any sources? No. There are no Islamic idols in Somnath temple. But the Arabs believe that their goddesses have come here for safety. That much I know. This much is factual based on Sitaram Goel's book. Sitaram Goel's book is called Islam vis-a-vis Hindu temples. Okay. Jamal and Patta were the warriors who defended Chittor against Mughals. So why would Akbar build a statue of them to humiliate them? That is what Meenakshi Jain is claiming here. Okay, Srihari is saying taking Ashudh history out of history to spread Bhaichara is what makes it Ashudh. Yes. Kanwar Pal Singh is saying Raja Dahir is the last Hindu king of Sindh. His daughters were taken to the harem. And his daughters, I guess it's his daughters, right? Or some other Afghanistan or Pakistan areas, Hindu kings' daughters had done a funny thing. They were abducted, sent to the Muslim overlords in Persia or Turkey. And the invader who sent them, these princesses decided to punish that particular invader. So they went to the boss and said that no, we are not virgin, because that king expected them to be virgin before raping them. So those girls knew that what's going to happen. So the princesses said that guy already raped us. We already had sex with him. Were raped by him. We are not virgin, even though they actually were virgins. So the king actually got pissed off with the invader who invaded Pakistan. I think it's in the Kashmir region. That's the story where I learned. I think it was in Sanjay Dixit's book. And so that the boss asked that king to be sent to him, and he tied him up inside a sack and made horses run over that sack. So that's how that invader died, because of the lies of the princesses. And the princesses obviously got killed. They knew they would be killed anyway, but they at least they created this confusion before dying. Okay. Nihilist is saying, I only came to know about Sirhindi when I read Sai's second book. Yeah, absolutely. In India, Bharat, Pakistan mein hi pehle padha. Uttishta Bharat is saying because he killed them during the battle, and also they were the reason why he could not get the women. The women committed jawhar. तो उसके लिए humiliate करने के लिए मूर्ति बनाने का चीज़ मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. Maybe they hated मूर्तिs anyway. That's why they made a मूर्ति that अच्छा ये देखो इन चुतियों का हम मूर्ति बना देते हैं. हार गया इसलिए. Maybe that was the idea. Okay, Kanwar Pal Singh is saying Bin Kashim and Dahir's daughters. Yeah, Raja Dahir's daughters only. See, this is what I'm saying. All the people commenting in my comment section know a lot of things more than me. All of you all need to have YouTube channels. Okay. Now, this seems to be a gist of Sanjay Dixit's book. The sheer magnitude of the revenue demand under the Mughals is carefully concealed from students. In Kashmir, for example, okay, not Sanjay Dixit. In Kashmir, for example, Akbar discovered that 2/3 of the crop was being extracted from the peasants and reduced it to 50%. Revenue demand. The Dutch factor Gellinson found in Gujarat in 1629 that the cultivators had to surrender 3/4 of their produce. A farman dated 1665 reveals that some jagirdars in Gujarat were attempting to extract from the peasants more than the whole produce in revenue by the simple device of declaring the yield to be 2.5 times more than what it actually was. Apart from the high revenue demand, the peasants had to pay a number of additional taxes and cesses. Under Aurangzeb, the inhabitants of a village complained that the additional illegal demand of the revenue officials totaled nearly 1/3 of the jama. In many cases, the total tax liability of the peasants became so enormous that they were forced to sell their wives, children, and cattle to meet the state demand. Yet the text is silent on all these matters. Never heard of these things. The chapter on Jahangir makes no mention of his hostility to the Sikh Guru Arjan. Yeah, of course, Sikh Guru Arjan, as he himself expressed it in his autobiography and his execution of the latter. The reaction of the Guru's son and successor Hargobind in girding two swords, Piri and Miri, symbolizing the contemporary complementary of spiritual and temporal authority, his construction of the Akal Takht at the Golden Temple, and his imprisonment at Gwalior Fort by Jahangir for 2 years are also ignored. Jahangir's execution of the Sikh leader is dismissed in half a sentence 2 chapters later in a chapter on cultural and religious developments, where it stated, "Death of Guru Arjun by Jahangir." ऐसे just गया था, थोड़ा बवाल हुआ, मार दिया. It's all small matter. Jahangir's desecration of the sacred Hindu site Pushkar is glossed over. I never knew about this. While mentioning Jahangir's dealings with Sheikh Ahmed Sirindi, it is nowhere stated that after the release of the latter from prison, the emperor conferred a robe of honor and 1,000 rupees on him. 1,000 rupees us waqt, and gave him permission to stay on at the imperial camp, where in fact Sirindi stayed for 3 years, delivering sermons, some of which were heard by the emperor. Shah Jahan's destruction of the massive temple Bir Sang Bundela had constructed near his palace and construction of a mosque on the site, and his order of 1633 prohibiting the repair of shrines and destruction of new places of worship in Banaras. Ye sab Shah Jahan ne to raha hai. Shah Jahan's harassment of the Sikh Guru Hargobind is not part of the main narrative dealing with the emperor, but is again hidden in a general chapter on cultural and religious developments. The appropriation of revenues by a very small clique. In the year 1647-48, a mere 445 mansabdars consumed more than 3/4 of the revenues of the state. The general unacceptability of Dara's views within his community, Dara Shikoh, this is the most important part. I don't think I remembered Dara Shikoh's name until right-wingers started talking about him. The general unacceptability of Dara's views. Why was Dara's views unacceptable? This should have been. This is absolutely a necessary thing to be taught in history books. देखो, ये है तुम्हारा अच्छा ancestor, Islamic hero है. He's not a hero, at least he tried to be. But उसको मार दिया गया. वो ठीक था. जिन्होंने उनको दारा शिकोह को मारा वो गलत थे. That should be taught. The general unacceptability of Dara's views within his community is inexplicably ignored by the foremost proponents of India's composite culture. The severity of the jizya tax, which had a determining role in lower caste conversion to Islam, finds no mention. It has been estimated that as much as 15% of the total income of the state during Aurangzeb's time came from jizya. Aurangzeb's exclusive recruitment of Muslim nobles of the erstwhile states of Bijapur and Golconda into Mughal service and his dismissal of Brahmin and Telugu officials are conspicuously evaded. क्योंकि ब्राह्मण के साथ कुछ खराब हुआ तो अच्छा ही है. That is the narrative. The strong tradition of rebellion and agrarian resistance in Mughal India finds little space in the text. which is truly surprising given that Marxists have generally been obsessed with the role of economic forces in determining history. Marxist until it doesn't suit their agenda, okay? The long-standing policy of settling Afghans in areas of resurgence with a view to affecting their participation is quietly overlooked. Afghans लाए जा रहे थे ताकि और भी हमारा मैन पावर बढ़े उन लोगों का. Surprisingly, there is no mention of Jahanabad and Lahore fort in the discussion on Mughal architecture, though photographs of the former have been provided. Acha. Now we start the third chapter of this paper. Now let me take a sip of coffee and water. Dara translated Upanishads in Farsi. 60 to 70% of nobility during Mughal era was always foreigners from Iran, Tehran and Afghanistan. Ye Tehran ya Turan is it Tehran? Let truth prevail. Samples of confusion, obfuscation, distortion. Now, अब text उठा के मीनाक्षी जैन चप्पल मारने वाली है. During the early period, the Arabs displayed a remarkable capacity of assimilating the scientific knowledge and administrative skills of the ancient civilizations they had overrun. They had no hesitation in employing non-Muslims such as Christians and Jews, and also non-Arabs, particularly the Iranians, many of whom were Zoroastrians, and even Buddhists, for running the administration. एक religion miss हो गया ना यहाँ से. Observation: The Arab employment of non-Muslims was dictated by circumstances. Now, why is that? Now she is quoting some other historian. P.M. Holt, Anne K.S. Lambton, Bernard Lewis, etc. In the Cambridge History of Islam, volume this and this, they note that the Arabs who had emigrated to the provinces from their peninsula retained at all events, to begin with, their privileges as well as the burdens deriving from military service, which was incumbent on them alone. The natives continued to devote themselves to agriculture or to the exercise of their crafts and profession as builders, cultivators, physicians and teachers, while they also obtained employment in the administrative offices, built ships for the conquerors and offered their services as sailors. This was because the Arabs despised work in the fields. Field तो देखा ही नहीं, work in the field कैसे करेगा. और इसीलिए आज भी मेजर गौड़वाड़िया ये भी बोलते हैं ना कि ग्राउंड लेवल हार्डकोर गेटिंग इन द डर्ट एंड रनिंग अ बिजनेस, ये तो आता ही नहीं उनको. पाकिस्तान कुछ करेगा कैसे, कभी किया ही नहीं. जो कर सकते हैं उनको ही तो भगा दिया लाहौर से. This was because the Arabs despised work in the fields and scorned certain crafts. For example, the weaving of textiles, or lacked the necessary training. Because they were afraid of the sea, and in government service could occupying only those posts which required no previous experience. Muawiya's tolerance towards Christians can also be explained as due to his awareness of their strength. Who are Muawiya's now? Okay, another text from Satish Chandra's book, which we are going to critique, which Meenakshi Jain criticizes. Unfortunately, the Indian states, weakened themselves by continually fighting against each other, sacking the towns and not even sparing the temples. Ultimately, they were destroyed by the sultans of Delhi in the beginning of the 14th century. ये तो अजीब बात हुआ. Destroying temples का blame दिया, मगर हिंदू राजाओं पे दिया. के देखो दूसरे हिंदू राजाओं का टेम्पल के डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया. मगर ये जब टेम्पल डिस्ट्रक्शन होता है, आई डोंट नो ऑफ टेम्पल डिस्ट्रक्शंस, बट idols used to be stolen, taken away to their own kingdom and made with more finances. They were competing for who can be more devoted to the god. Like I'm tweeting this particular thing that I learned of as a proof that yes, the Marathas definitely sent Hindu generals to ransack the Bengali townships or villages during Muslim rule in Bengal, who were called Borgis. because Iyer Mitra has said that they sent mostly Muslim kings, but Muslim generals. That might be the case in some instances, because there were countless times that Borghese had come to destroy the houses of Hindu Bengalis as well as Muslim Bengalis in the villages. But I was reading up about the history of Ram Puja and Ram Bhakti in Bengal. There I was learning of a region in Bengal, in South Bengal, where there's an ancient Ram temple, not ancient, medieval, but there the Borghese came and did some destruction in and around the place, but they took the idol and left. So if it was a Muslim king, Muslim general, they would have come and destroyed that idol. ये जो taking back का case है, this is definitely a Hindu job, because they want to take it to their place in Maharashtra and then worship it. Story काहे करेगा? Turan is Central Asia. Is it still called Turan? Or Central Asia used to be called Turan? Okay, Uttrisha Bharata is saying Kachawa Rajputs were still with the Mughals. Why? तो यही तो हिंदू यूनिटी का प्रॉब्लम है. They didn't know that they are supposed to be united as Hindu. ये करना है, यही किसी के दिमाग में नहीं आया ना बहुत देर तक. अच्छा, so much has been made of attacks on images and temples by Hindu kings in times of war. The intention appears to be to demonstrate that the Turks merely followed established practices in the subcontinent. Instances of desecration by Hindu kings, however, are rare and never backed by any theory of iconoclasm. Yes, when they are destroying temples, it's not because of religious reasons. That is actually for just showing your dominance, which Romila Thapar and these people claim that the Muslims also did that. The Muslims actually did that because of the hatred of the religion. नहीं तो कितने मूर्तियों में ऐसा है कि पूरा मूर्ति का मूर्ति वहां पे है, सिर्फ नाक तोड़ दिया, सिर्फ फेस उड़ा दिया. कितने जैन टेम्पल्स में भी ऐसा है. वो क्यों? इकोनॉमिक रीजन की वजह से मूर्ति का सिर्फ मुंह उड़ा के भाग गया. ये कैसा इकोनॉमिक रीजन है? और चोरी कौन करता है? जिसको पसंद नहीं है मूर्ति, चोरी करके खुद के जगह में लेके पूजा कर रहा है, उसको पसंद नहीं है मूर्ति. तो instances of desecration are rare. In most cases, Hindu rulers honored the images they acquired from enemy kings, even building stately temples for them. Yes. In the Hindu case, then, acquisition of images from rival kings implied only a change of proprietorship. Yes, unlike the Islamic case. This is what happened during the Borghi attacks on Bengal, which entailed the very deconstruction of the image. तो ये तो थोड़ा nice word हो गया. Actually, they were destroyed. To cite a few examples, in 950 AD, the Chandela ruler Yasovarman built the Lakshmana temple at Khajuraho to house a gold image of Vishnu he had acquired from the Pratihara ruler. Okay, see, even Meenakshi Jain is being a little unfair now. It's not acquired. If it was stolen, it was stolen. Why beat around the bush? It was stolen from the Pratihara ruler. The Vijayanagar stolen with not a destructive intention, with the intention of doing puja of it, but it's still stolen. The Pratihara ruler would have liked it in his own temple. The Vijayanagar king Krishnadeva Raya likewise constructed the Krishnaswamy temple for an image of Balakrishna, procured. अरे procured ये सब word क्यों use कर रहा है? Procured from the Gajapatis of Orissa, and the Vitthalaswamy temple for a Vitthala image brought from an expedition to Pandharpur. Okay, Vitthala. Who is Vitthala? Vitthala is it another manifestation of Lord Krishna? Any Kannada people here? Yeah, Flight of Deities of Meenakshi Jain extensively talks about this. Yes, that's the first time I had heard of Meenakshi Jain's name, because Desai Deepak used to talk extensively about Flight of Deities. It's one of Desai Deepak's favorite books, I think. A rare instance of vandalism by a Hindu king comes from Kashmir. King Lalitaditya once promised safe conduct to the ruler of Gaur and offered as surety the image of Vishnu Parihasa Kesava. He, however, went back on his word, so he betrayed Lalitaditya and had the Gauda ruler killed. An outraged group of the latter's followers went to Kashmir disguised as pilgrims and made for the Parihasa Kesava temple, which housed the image. They seized a silver image of Ramaswamy, which they mistook for Parihasa Kesava, and broke it to pieces, even as Lalitaditya's soldiers pounced on them and killed them. Lol. Indian history is so nuanced. एक दो sentences में Indian history का बात करोगे तो खत्म. Hindu destruction of Buddhist and Jain places of worship too cannot be placed on par with Islamic iconoclasm. The evidence of such acts, according to Andre Wink, is quote-unquote too vague to be convincing. Shashanka. Were we discussing about him, right? In Bengal. Shashanka, a king of Karnasuvarna in the 7th century AD, 700 AD, described among the foremost persecutors of Buddhism, for example. Okay, yeah, this is the guy we were talking about. The foremost persecutors of Buddhism, for example, is said to have cut down the Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya, but is also said that the tree was revived and in the course of one night grew to a height of over 3 meters, which is surely an anomalous situation. Shankaravarman of Kashmir, 883 AD, is another Hindu ruler depicted as iconoclast, but he never vandalized a temple or icon, contenting himself with temple lands and treasures. Okay, he was just taking temple lands and temple ka treasure, not with the temple itself or icon or the murtis. Harsha of Kashmir in 1089 to 1101 ये एरिया में रूल किया ये टाइमलाइन पे, certainly defiled images, but in emulation of Muslim conduct, as is evident from the epithet Harshara Jaturuksha bestowed on him. Okay, he was trying to copy Muslim kings. It is also significant that he employed a number of Turkish officers in his army. Moreover, A. Basham, Al Basham is one of the most famous historians in the world. Moreover, A. Basham, the teacher of Romila Thapar, credits the heretical Ajivikas for motivating Harsha towards such iconoclasm. Yeah, ये थोड़ा अजीब excuse है. ये heretical Ajivikas को ही अशोका ने भी मार दिया था. The heretical Ajivikas for motivating Harsha towards such iconoclasm. Harsha Turuksha. Vithala is an incarnation of Vishnu. Okay, yeah. The last line of Chandrachura has that sentence that Kodarali Bhasma Rudrakshava Dharisira Parama Vaishnavanuni Parama Vaishnavanu Nine Garuda Gamana Nama Purandara Vithalana Prana Priyanune. That is the last line of that song. This is also called, okay, now another text from the book itself. This is also called the Rajaraja temple because the Cholas were in the habit of installing images of kings and queens in the temples in addition to the deity. A large number of temples were also built at other places in South India. However, it may be well remembered that the proceeds for some of the activities were obtained from the plunder of the population of the neighboring areas by the Chola rulers. अच्छा, ये जो plundering of the population, temple destruction, ये सब हिंदू किंगों पे डाला जा रहा है. अगर किसी हिंदू किंग ने ये किया है तो फाइन, तो मेंशन दैट. हिंदू किंगों ने और क्या क्या किया है वो सब भी मेंशन कर देते, ये भी मेंशन कर देते, तब क्या प्रॉब्लम है. मगर ये मुस्लिम किंग्स ने कभी भी नहीं किया है. ये नैरेटिव सेट करके फिर ये चीज़ एक दो बार जब हिंदू किंग कर रहे हैं उसका डिपिक्शन दे रहे हैं as if yeah I'm being so objective bro, I'm being objective, I don't want to create a narrative, that's why I'm mentioning that Hindu kings did bad things to Hindu people. Same thing जब मुस्लिम किंग कर रहा है तब मेंशन नहीं हो रहा है. The images of kings and queens. Okay, now this is where Meenakshi Jain refutes this. The images of kings and queens in temples only depicted them as worshippers and were not intended to supplant the images of the gods. The royal cult centers that emerged in early medieval India, represented as B.D. Chattopadhyay has pointed out, the integration of local cults and their centers. Okay, the royal cult centers that emerged in early medieval India represented the integration of local cults and their centers. Yes, obviously. The deity became the ruler of the region and the monarch his representative. Yeah, ये तो एक classic tradition है that the king is the representative of the god. Well-known examples are the cult of Purushottama, that is Jagannath in Orissa, and the relationship between the Guhila rulers of Mewar and the Shaivite deity Ekalinga. Okay, never heard of Guhila. Mewar कहाँ पे? राजस्थान में है ना? Temples were built from the legitimate profits of trade and hence were often found on trade routes. Yes, obviously. By linking their construction with plunder, the author seems to be attempting to establish an artificial parity. ये false equivalency करने का कोशिश कर रहा है कि देखो उन्होंने अगर कोई मुस्लिम किंग्स ने अगर कोई तोड़ा वोड़ा भी होगा, देखो they were just like Hindu kings who also broke temples. Artificial parity with the conduct of the Turks. Okay, another text. Let me check out some comments. Vithala would mean one standing on a brick. I see. Ajivika survive Ashoka. Dasaru literature and Dasara, yeah, ends with Vithala. Yes. All of those I think ends with Vithala. Maharana Pratap of Gohila, Sisodia, Rajput. Oh, I see. Arey, tum log sab YouTube channel kholo yaar. Okay. So the text is, many other writers took their themes from the Ramayana and Mahabharata, thus bringing these classics nearer to people. Many folk or popular themes are also to be found in these literatures. Popular themes which were not derived from Sanskrit and which reflect popular sentiments and emotions are called desi or rural in Telugu. Okay. So Meenakshi Jain's observation on this is that the Ramayana and Mahabharata were never inaccessible to the populace. Indeed, the epics were a medium through which philosophic thoughts and insights were routinely expressed at the popular level. ये तो 100% true है, because that is why the basic wisdom at the ground level of Indians is insanely higher than the rest of the world, I will say. Rest of the world के even the stupidest Indian is more intelligent than most other lower class lower intelligence people of the world. हमारा basic wisdom बहुत advanced है. बेसिक डे टू डे लाइफ में क्या करना है, किस सिचुएशन में कैसे डील करना है प्रॉब्लम्स के साथ, ये विजडम इंडियंस का, हिंदुओं का बहुत एडवांस्ड है, हर हिंदू का, बिकॉज ऑफ दीज टेक्स्ट्स. As H. Zimmer has pointed out, the perfectly appropriate pictorial script of mythology preserved the philosophical ideas without in any way damaging their sense. Yes. In the symbolic form, ideas did not have to be diluted to be popularized. Yes. Like I was discussing a few days back, that Krittibash Ojha popularized the Ramayana in Bengali with an absolutely Bengali twist to the Ramayana, that as if Ram is being born in a Bengali family, having all Bengali dishes, doing the Annaprashana ceremony according to Bengali traditions, having marriage ceremony as Bengali traditions. Goddess Lakshmi is depicted as a great cook of making Bengali sweets, countless, about 15 sweets are mentioned in the poem. Oh, in that Krittibash Ojha's Ramayana is important for another reason, because we get a sense of what were the musical instruments of those days. Because I think while depicting Ram's coming back to Ayodhya, they mention that what were the instruments being played in the fanfare and processions, pakhwaj, etc. There Krittibash Ojha has mentioned countless instruments, so we can understand what were the instruments, if not in the time of Ram at least, we know what were the instruments during the time of Krittibash Ojha at least. That we can understand from that poem. Okay, Chandra Jain, okay, another Jaina dynasty guy in our comment section. Later Marathas were different than earlier Marathas. Okay, I see. Vijay Dasa ends with Vijay Vithala. I see. Oh, that's why Purandara Vithala, Vijay Vithala. Okay. Kanwar Singh is saying Grama Devta. Srihari is saying Purandara Vithala is the Kirtana Nama of Purandara Dasa. I see. Okay. Now the Satish Chandra book claims that in northern India, this period is considered a period of stagnation and even of decline. The main reason for this was the setback to trade and commerce between the 7th and 10th century. 7th and 10th century में setback हो गया हिंदुओं के वजह से. This in turn led to a decline of towns and town life in the region. The setback to trade and commerce was in part due to the collapse in the west of the Roman Empire, with which India had flourishing and profitable trade. अच्छा ये finally बताया. As a result, there was remarkable paucity of new gold coins in North India between the 8th and 10th century. The situation gradually changed with the emergence of a powerful and extensive Arab empire in West Asia and North Africa. Foreign trade and commerce in northern India began to revive gradually from the 10th century onwards because of nice Muslim kings, okay? But remember, this is a time when Roman Empire had a trade deficit with India. India was exporting so much and not buying anything back, so that was pissing off Roman senators. Remember that story that in the court of King Vespasian, senator which poet, famous Greek poet, he was a senator. He was saying, अरे इंडिया के साथ बिजनेस बंद करो, खुद का मतलब only consume Greek products. They are selling so much, we are not buying enough. So they were trying to go for a make in Greece, make in Rome policy. This view of the post-Gupta period, Meenakshi Jain observes, this view of the post-Gupta period has been seriously questioned and seems part of the Marxist proclivity to devalue Indian accomplishments and to Indian accomplishments and to link the so-called Indian economy recovery in the 10th century to the Islamic advent. अच्छा, Islamic kings were so good at economic recovery कि आज तक पाकिस्तान को रिकवर नहीं कर पाया. हिंदू छोड़ गए पाकिस्तान, पाकिस्तान चला गया गड्ढे में. Andre Wink, for example, notes that R.S. Sharma, whose Indian feudalism has misguided virtually all historians of the period, not only because it is entirely written from the a priori assumption of the Dark Age, doggedly searching for point-by-point parallels with Europe, but also more accidentally because there has never been anything to challenge it. Following Sharma, historians have looked for an Indian parallel to European feudalism. Yes, सब कुछ का European equivalent ढूंढना है. अच्छा, ये चीज हुआ यहाँ पे. Oh, this is just like that thing in Europe. Everything. Nuance किसी के दिमाग में नहीं घुसता है. A type of social organization characterized by general economic and cultural decline, which in Europe was once explained, similarly with reference to barbarian invasions and the rise of Islam, Sharma has repeated his view innumerable times, almost verbatim often, and hardly developing them. They can be summarized as follows. What the summary is, we'll get into 1 second later. Let me digress and let me tell you this, that my observation is that why do they do this, that oh अच्छा ये एक फोन है, oh this is just like that European phone, oh ये ब्राह्मण है, oh this is just like Christian clergy, ये just like Europe या just like Europe, oh ये खाना यहाँ, oh this is just like Latin American. तो ये just like का जो tendency है, this is their goal of basically breaking down nationalism, breaking down patriotism, breaking down any significant cultural identity, because they are globalists. That is the problem. They think the entire world can be united under one umbrella, right? Under proletariat, poor people. So this is their attempt to do this. That kuch bhi, nothing is peculiar to any place. I'm not saying that everything is peculiar to India, everything coming from India, but जो चीज़ इंडिया का है वो बोलने में क्या problem है? Even anything now, let's say this, I can say this cup is inherently Indian. Maybe it has inspirations in design from other places, but this cup is Indian, right? What's the problem in mentioning this cup to be Indian? Maybe some other place can claim to make a good bowl. What's the problem with that? Indian, pro-Indian nuance kabhi nahi hoga inse. The Abrahamic lens, yes. Okay. So, what is the summary of R.S. Sharma and people like them? Their views according to Wink. The Indian economy in the 7th to 10th centuries, according to Sharma, became almost exclusively rural or agrarian-oriented, with trade and urbanism suffering a distinct decline internally, but also externally, as the India trade fell off because the Byzantines stopped importing silk from India, having introduced the silkworm from China themselves, and because of the so-called expansion of the Arabs under the banner of Islam. Sharma says that this can be deduced from the absence of finds of Indian gold coins in these centuries and the apparently paucity, the abhava of coins in general, even though texts refer to the abundant use of coined money and land charters speak of taxes in gold, and there remains evidence of commercial activity on the coast. अच्छा, सिर्फ coin नहीं मिला इसलिए बोल दिया कि business नहीं हुआ. Trade and commerce were feudalized and India acquired a so-called closed economy. The major positive evidence from which Sharma claims to derive his thesis are charters of grants of land or villages to Brahmins, temples and others, which appeared in significant numbers in many parts of the subcontinent towards the end of the rule of the imperial Guptas. Achha, apart from the negative evidences relating to the absence or paucity of coins, अच्छा, negative evidence भी है. The positive evidence है ये. Positive evidence means that, yeah, this kind of hints at what I'm trying to prove. Negative evidence means that अच्छा ये नहीं हुआ था, इसका मतलब ये definitely सच होगा. That's negative evidence. Imperial Guptas. These charters are evidence of the agrarian reorientation of the age and of the decentralization or fragmentation of political power, the parallel of European infeudation or defeudalization. The origin and development of the Indian form of political feudalism, Sharma thus finds in so-called land grants made to Brahmins. In the feudal economy, in the so-called feudal economy, the Indian village became nearly self-contained with local needs locally satisfied, while at the same time a class of landlords arose, with hierarchic control over land being created by large-scale sub-infeudation, especially from the 8th century onwards, and with vassals and sub-vassals who had to supply troops to and fight for their lord. A class of subject peasantry, that is, serfdom, with peasants being forcefully attached to the soil, also arose in many parts of India. There was even a significant link between the breakdown of slavery and enterprise of serfdom. And finally, the process of feudalization is accompanied by the formation of regional cultural units, the proliferation of castes, the beginnings of the development of regional and local languages. The local element in language was strengthened by the insulation of these areas, regional scripts too, and regional styles in sculpture and construction of temples. It is clear that Sharma, loyal to a materialist explanation, feels that these latter tendencies are the cultural superstructure of the feudal economy, thus increasing insularity of India's economy, which was not reversed before the 11th century when so-called India witnessed an expansion of commercial activities under Muslim kings. This should be enough to show that Sharma's thesis essentially involves an obstinate attempt to find elements which fit a preconceived picture of what should have happened in India because it happened in Europe, or is alleged to have happened in Europe by Sharma and his school of historians whose knowledge of European history is rudimentary and completely outdated. Lol. So this historian is not just saying that Sharma keeps trying to equate India with Europe, he is also saying that Sharma को European history भी ठीक से पता नहीं है. Or because of the antiquated Marxist scheme of a necessary development of feudalism out of slavery. ये तो मार्क्स ने प्रेडिक्ट किया था, तो यही होगा. That is their notion. The methodological underpinnings of Sharma's work are in fact so thin that one wonders why for so long Sharma's colleagues have called his work pioneering. इतना खराब scholarship में pioneering कैसे हुआ? That is this historian's question. Okay. Later Marathas, okay, once let me read the questions. Not question, the comments. Da Casta, Portuguese concept, yes. Later Marathas had to fight at the same time. Pathans, Hyder Ali, Portuguese, British Bengal, Nawab, Rajputs collapsed their economic structure. Cultural digestion like beard yoga, yes, which resulted in them looting temples and beating Hindus. Many letters of Nana Fadnavis laments this and urges the Bhonsles to stop doing these acts. I see. Okay, so this is another text from the book. In some of the Dharma Shastras which were written during this period, this is Satish Chandra writing, okay? In some of the Dharma Shastras which were written during this period, a ban is put on travel beyond the areas where the munja grass does not grow or where the black gazelle does not roam, that is, outside India. Of course, not everybody took these bans seriously. Perhaps the ban was meant for Brahmanas only, or was meant to discourage too many Indians going to the areas dominated by Islam in the west and Buddhism in the east, for fear of their bringing back heretical religious ideas which may be embarrassing and unacceptable to the Brahmanas and to the ruling groups. What a weird thing. Weird claim. So, ये जो काला पानी क्रॉस नहीं करने का जो बैन था, this according to Satish Chandra was done so that they don't get inspired by Islam and Buddhism outside India. So Meenakshi Jain's counter is that there is evidence of Indian contacts with the wider world from the time of the Indus civilization. As Burton Stein has perceptively pointed out, it was only when the Muslims came to dominate the Indian Ocean that seafaring became a taboo for Hindus. As for the threat from the heretical ideas of Islam, the Rashtrakuta rulers had permitted Muslim traders to preach Islam in their domains. Several centuries later, Barbosa records that the Vijayanagar kings allowed every man to live according to his own creed without suffering any annoyance and without enquiry whether he is a Christian, Jew, Moor or heathen. The Bhakti movement, noted for its egalitarian teachings, long preceded the Islamic advent in India, and several of its leaders were Brahmins. Moreover, the much vaunted heretical religious ideas of Islam were not in evidence in India, where the foreign Muslims always accorded a secondary status to Indian converts. Okay, this is the thing I had heard from Abhijit Chavra. I had questions about this, so now my question is answered. That Abhijit Chavra had said that the reason that people were not allowed to go outside India was because when they were returning, they are saying that their families have been destroyed, they have been converted because of Islamic invasions. So the time when the ban on crossing Kalapani comes in, that's when it seems to coincide with the Islamic invasions. That was Abhijit Chavra's theory, and this seems to be this seems to be noticeable in this observation as well, that it was only when Muslims came to dominate the Indian Ocean that seafaring became a taboo for Hindus. Burton Stein is saying this, and Sandeep Sanyal actually has gotten this wrong. Sandeep Sanyal has said in Land of Seven Rivers and Ocean of Churn that Brahmins prevented people from going out and crossing the Kalapani, etc., crossing India's borders. But he has not given any reason. He has said that we don't know why Brahmins did this. I think this is the reason why. Observation. Okay, now now caste system. Satish Chandra's words on caste system. The caste system, which had been established much earlier, formed the basis of the society. The Smriti writers of the period exalt the privileges of the Brahmanas and even surpass the previous writers in emphasizing the social and religious disabilities of the Shudras. It is difficult to say how far the ideas of the Smriti writers were practiced in daily life. Okay, but there is no doubt that the disabilities from which the lower castes suffered increased during the period. Okay, ये last दो sentences देखो. Last दो sentences are 180-degree opposites of each other. He's saying it is difficult to say how far the ideas of the Smriti writers were practiced in daily life. If at all the Smritis said that Shudro ko atyachar karo, he is not sure that whether it was practiced in daily life or not. Smriti में लिख दिया तो लिख दिया. कोई follow कर रहा है क्या? इस topic पे उसके पास कोई information नहीं है. उसके बाद अगले sentence में बोल देता है कि there is no doubt that the disabilities that lower caste suffered increased during the period. Okay, Meenakshi Jain's counter is that most of the Indian kingdoms were founded by the so-called lower castes and tribes who were given Kshatriya status after they assumed political power. Aeons ago, the Mahabharata, reflecting this reality, had observed that the source of rivers and Kshatriyas are difficult to trace. This is an interesting line, I had never heard of this. Nadi और Kshatriya कहाँ से आता है किसी को पता नहीं. The period between the 7th and 12th centuries witnessed the rise of a number of new royal lineages in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh. New royal lineages, okay? Not hereditary. नए लोग अचानक से राजा बन गए. This is so important. New royal lineages in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, which came to constitute a socio-political category known as Rajput. Some of the major royal lineages were the Pratiharas of Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and adjacent areas, the Guhilas and the Kahamanas or Chahamanas of Rajasthan, never heard of them, the Chalukyas, okay, yeah, Chahamanas, the Chalukyas or Solankis of Gujarat and Rajasthan, and the Paramaras of Madhya Pradesh. Paramaras of Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. Among others, who also claimed to be Rajputs, were the Chandelas of Bundelkhand and the Gahadavalas. Oh, that's not D. Yeah, this is what you were talking about, right? Garhwalas. Garhwal. Okay, Garhwal maybe is named after them, right? The Rajput category remained the means by which an upwardly mobile social group could enhance its status. The Rajput category was a sign of upward social mobility. It is well recognized that hierarchical ranking was not clearly defined and was not clearly defined and was also operational over large parts of the subcontinent even as late as colonial times. The status of the same caste often varied from locality to locality. At the village level, the agricultural castes, the so-called Shudras, were numerically preponderant and economically and politically powerful. Many Englishmen themselves commented on the flexibility of the system. The ethnographer Thurston, for example, came across a Tamil proverb to the effect that a Kallan may come to be a Maravan by respectability, he may be developed into an agam mudayan and by slow degrees become a vellala from which he may rise to be a mudaliyar. Prior to the census operations of the 19th century, Shudra rank was not an embarrassment to cultivating castes like Vellalas who openly proclaimed their status in temple inscriptions. Okay, Satish Chandra says, it seems that originally people from different castes, including Brahmanas and Shudras, who worked in the royal establishments were called Kayastha. In course of time, they emerged as a distinct caste. Hinduism was expanding rapidly during this period. During the period, it not only absorbed large numbers of Buddhists and Jains within its fold. अच्छा, Buddhists and Jains were being converted to Hinduism. ये कैसे होता है? Buddhism, तो ये जो लोग Buddhist और Jains हैं, इनके ancestors पहले क्या थे? हाँ? Buddhists and Jains were being converted to Hinduism, and as if Buddhism and Jainism came before Hinduism. So Hinduism was rapidly increasing and engulfing Buddhists and Jains. So Buddhists and Jains within its fold, but many indigenous tribes and foreigners were also Hinducized. These new sections formed new castes and subcastes, and often continued their own customs, rituals of marriage ceremonies, and even their own tribal gods and goddesses. Thus, society and religion became more and more complex. Yeah, इसमें problem क्या है? That's why the dharma is a superstructure. It's the framework under which secularism, individuality, everything can function. Observation. An entirely novel thesis on the origin of the Kayasthas, Meenakshi Jain says. P.D. Chattopadhyay, however, says that one distinct social group which makes itself noticeable in the records from the Gupta period onwards was that of the Kayastha. Most Brahmins in Bengal are Kayastha. Drawn from the ranks of scribes, accountants and so on, the Kayasthas crystallized into distinct North Indian subcastes and were closely associated with new royal courts. The so-called Hinduization of the tribes is also misleading, for it overlooks the fact that tribal gods and goddesses were elevated to high status in the Hindu pantheon. The Jagannatha cult of Orissa is the most well-known example of this trend. Even Shiva is equated with Rudra for this very same reason. The characteristics of the Vedic Rudra generally starts accumulating more and more different indigenous traditions, which finally become Shiva in Mahabharata, in the Mahabharata Ramayana times. That is the framework of accumulating and accommodating everyone, that okay, you don't believe in this god, your god kind of seems like my god, doesn't it? So you see, we are all the same. That is how Hinduism has flourished, and this is why Hinduism is not just one religion or a party. Okay, Hinduism is a coalition of all the Vedic and even pre-Vedic sampradayas of India who are now saying enough is enough. That is what Hinduism is. Okay, now Satish Chandra says Hinduism is a coalition, remember. Satish Chandra says the Matsya Purana authorizes the husband to beat his erring wife, though not on the head or the breasts, with the rope or a split bamboo. Women continued to be denied the right to study the Vedas. अच्छा, ये सब पढ़ा दिया क्लास 11 के बुक में, और मैं बोल रहा था कि no, it should not be pinned on the religion. Women continued to be denied the right to study the Vedas. Furthermore, the marriageable age for girls was lowered, thereby destroying their opportunities for higher education. The omission of all reference to women teachers in the dictionaries written during the period shows the poor state of higher education among women. However, from some of the dramatic works of the period, we find that the court ladies and even the queen's maid-in-waiting were capable of composing excellent Sanskrit and Prakrit verses. Various stories point to the skill of the princesses in the fine arts, especially in painting and music. Daughters of high officials, courtesans and concubines were also supposed to be highly skilled in various arts, including poetry. It appears that with the growth of the practice of large number of women being maintained by the feudal chiefs, and with the resultant disputes about property, there was a tendency for the right of sati to spread. Acha, sati aa gaya. So, when they are discussing problems in Hindu society of then, they are pinning it on Hindu text and Hindu religion as a whole, not the people doing the particular bad things who happen to be Hindu. But when it comes to Islam, it's the opposite for Satish Chandra. Okay. A classic case of doublespeak. Meenakshi Jain says, a classic case of doublespeak. The author first laments the decline in the education of women and then goes on to say that even the queen's maid-in-waiting were capable of composing excellent Sanskrit and Prakrit verses. ये कैसे होता है? पढ़ाई नहीं किया मगर अच्छा कवि है. अच्छा. Daughters of high officers are also described as skilled in various arts. Okay, maybe Satish Chandra means that only the daughters of those people were educated, not the farmers. फार्मर का क्यों सोशियोलॉजी या अच्छा कविता लिखने वाली बेटी क्यों नहीं हुई? That is Satish Chandra's claim, I think. There are several examples. Meenakshi Jain says there are several examples of women participating in the political process in the Hindu kingdoms of this period. A Rashtrakuta princess, Chandrabalabbe, daughter of Amogha I, for example, administered Raichur Doab for some time. The Kara dynasty, this is in, I think, Orissa. The Kara dynasty boasted of at least 5 female rulers. Yeah, this is in Orissa. Their famous temple is Battala Deula, which has a vicious version of Devi Durga. It's I think the Katyayani manifestation. You have to check out the temple's architecture. I covered this in my video of that why Bengalis are secular. There I discussed this temple. Muhammad of Ghur was defeated near Mount Abu by a force led by Regent Queen Naiki Devi in AD 1178 to 79, whose name I hadn't heard of before today. Kashmir in the mid 10th century was ruled by the famous Queen Didda. I think she was murdered. She was forced to marry her who defeated her, I think, as far as I remember. And then she died on the wedding night, mysteriously. The Kakatiyas had a woman ruler, Rudramadevi, yes, on who there's a Telugu movie, for almost 35 years. Ganga Devi, wife of Prince Kampana of Vijayanagar, composed the Madurai Vijaya, described as one of the finest epics of resistance in medieval literature, which I had never heard of. The phenomenon of sati was noted even by the Greeks who accompanied Alexander and can hardly be attributed to property disputes among wives. Surely Marx did not have this in mind when he talked of economic forces shaping history. Okay. Now Satish Chandra's text says, okay, Afin says, what the hell does higher education in those times even mean? Even today our education is only to make us workers for some company. Higher education would mean that everyone becomes a Brahmin. सब कोई सब काम छोड़ के क्यों वेदास और पुराणास नहीं पढ़ रहे हैं? हायर एजुकेशन में है क्या पढ़ने का उस वक्त? Or maybe they should have studied Kannada sutras and become doctors. Everyone should have done that. There's no one should have been farmers and no one should have been blacksmiths. No one should have been craftsmen, etc. That is the Marxist claim. Now Satish Chandra's text says, the belief grew among Hindus that a worshipper could attain what he desired by uttering magical words or mantra. Magical word. Mantra ka translation kiya hai magical words. And making various kinds of mystic gestures. और अब सब लोग बोलते फिरते कि that is my mantra, this is my mantra. But यहाँ mantra was magical words, okay? They also believed that by these practices and by various kinds of austerities and secret rites, they could attain supernatural powers such as the power to fly in the air, to become invisible, to see things at a distance, etc. Man has always yearned for control over nature in this manner. It is only with the growth of modern science that many of these yearnings have been fulfilled. Many Hindu yogis also adopted these practices. Okay, so see, when it comes to Hinduism, they are absolutely going full Monty on full destruction mode on Hinduism, Satish Chandra. They never spoke this way of Islam. Observations. Meenakshi Jain says, typical of Marxist alienation from the spiritual ethos of this land, obviously the wisdom also. Uttering magical words, mantra, is a venerable tradition dating to Vedic times. The caricature of the beliefs and practices of the Hindus is a constant refrain in Marxist writings. Yeah, this we all know. Okay, Satish Chandra then says, in course of time, the growing rigidity of Jainism and loss of royal patronage led to the decline of Jainism. The revival and expansion of Hinduism took many forms. Shiva and Vishnu became the chief gods and magnificent temples were built to proclaim their supremacy. In this process, many local gods and goddesses, including the gods and goddesses of tribals who became Hinduized, became subordinate to their consorts. In eastern India, the consorts Tara, the consort of Buddha, Durga, the consort of Shiva, Kali, etc., became themselves the chief objects of worship. Durga, the consort of Shiva, became themselves the chief objects of worship. Ye acha hai ki kharab hai? Nevertheless, the rise of the worship of Shiva and Vishnu signified the growth of a process of cultural synthesis. Yes. Thus, in an era of disintegration, religion played a positive part. Acha, theek hai. But the religious revival also increased the power and arrogance of the Brahmanas. This resulted in a series of popular movements which emphasized the element of human equality and freedom. Okay, this is a common mistake. This is not Satish Chandra's just his mistake. Correlation is not equal to causality. Okay, this is the first lesson in statistics. This is also the first lesson forgotten by Marxists and statisticians. I'm quoting Thomas Sowell here. You'll always notice them doing this. That अच्छा एक दोनों चीज पैरेलली हुआ, अच्छा इसके लिए ये हो गया. These things don't have to be causalities. See, so in an era of disintegration, ये disintegration का claim ही पहले ही गलत है. अगर समझ लेते हैं कि ये disintegrated जो world इंडिया था उसमें religion played a positive part, ठीक है. But the religious revival also increased the power and arrogance of the Brahmanas. This is a claim absolutely not by any fact, not at least here, not anywhere. रिलीजियस रिवाइवल हुआ इसलिए ब्राह्मण का एरोगेंस बढ़ गया, ये बहुत अजीब चीज़ है, ठीक है. बिकॉज एरोगेंस, द इवल एरोगेंस दैट शोन बाय ब्राह्मण्स एंड नॉट इवन ऑल ब्राह्मण्स, बिकॉज देयर वर ब्राह्मण्स इन भक्ति मूवमेंट एज वेल. तो ये जो एरोगेंस विच इज़ अ बैड क्वालिटी, दैट बैड क्वालिटीज ओनली हैपन इन सम पीपल. ये जो बैड क्वालिटी है ये अचानक कैसे हो गया? जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ रिलीजियस रिवाइवल. अगर रिलीजियस रिवाइवल नहीं होता तो ये लोग अच्छे लोग रहते. दैट इज हिज क्लेम, सतीश चंद्रा's क्लेम. Religious revival made those people bad human beings. How does this happen? So these are just correlations, not causalities. This resulted in a series of popular movements. तो ये movements कैसे हुआ? यहाँ पे भी ब्राह्मण थे. The movements which he's talking about, which emphasize the element of human equality and freedom, he's talking about the Bhakti movement, which had Brahmins. Okay, now Meenakshi Jain is going to counter this after I countered this. The growing rigidity of Jainism, so-called growing rigidity of Jainism, is difficult to substantiate and forms part of the Marxist calumny to associate rigidity with Indic traditions. Again, Shiva and Vishnu in their high Hindu form were not the only gods instated in the magnificent temples built in these times, yes. It was often local and tribal gods and goddesses who were the chief deities, yes. Nor were they so-called subordinate to their consort of Buddha Durga. Yes, this is also pretty weird. As evident, for example, at the Meenakshi temple. Okay, we will do this last text and read this interpretation, and we will finish this paper probably tomorrow or Sunday or Monday. I think tomorrow should be ideal, but tomorrow History of Indian Philosophy book will arrive, so I can't decide which one to do. I think we should finish this paper tomorrow. So Satish Chandra says, meanwhile, the breakup of the Gurjara Pratihara empire led to a phase of political uncertainty in North India and a new phase of struggle for domination. As a result, little attention was paid to the emergence of an aggressive expansionist Turkish state on the northwestern border of India. Achha, aggressive to bola at least. Okay, Meenakshi Jain says, the frontier states of Al-Hind, Sindh, Kabul and Zabul resisted the Arab and Turkish invaders for almost 4 centuries. Almost 4 centuries. Predictably, this resistance find little mention in the context. Yeah, we were discussing this earlier as well. There were no mentions of any resistance from Hindu kings. Sindh held out for over 7 decades. The Turk Shahi and later Hindu Shahi dynasties offered a similar fight in Kabul and Zabul. The Rajput states of North India frequently they all united against the invaders. A Rajput confederacy aided both Jaipal and Anandpal. The Chandelas, Paramaras, Chahamanas, Kalachuris and Chalukyas all consistently confronted the invaders. Okay, तो ये जो एक डायनेस्टी खत्म हो गया इसलिए अचानक इस्लाम आ गया, that was not the case. It's not like this happened and then Islamic invasion happened. No, there were 400 years of resistance. They were preventing these invasions. So this is where we will stop, guys, to our 35. Remember the page number. We will start from here tomorrow. Most probably tomorrow, from page 21. We have another 30 pages to go. We'll have to go a little quicker tomorrow. Okay, thanks a lot for joining the live stream in the middle of the night, guys. See you tomorrow. Good night.